We got 7 grandson, 2 grandmothers. We got enough for both.
Boy. Got me beat. I got 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter.
I could just get the 11 and 12-year-olds to quit breaking stuff outside. But a lot better than walking. They got that snow. They got a snowball maker. So the mission needs to. It just what we need. And they disappeared.
They throw a lot better when you're freezing too.
That's what exactly what they were doing. Then I was in the shop and I heard this thing.
Yeah, whenever you are.
I call the meeting to order. We'll start with pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
Which just stands.
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mochler,
Here.
Packard, here, Smith, here, Manning,
Here.
Hammond.
Here. Conflict of interest declarations.
I will have a conflict of interest today.
On the bridge removal one?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll have one on the feedlot. Any others? Hearing none, approve agenda,
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes. Approve minutes. Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes. Visitors to be heard. Anybody who's not on the agenda? Don't see anybody. Let's see, Phil and Sam, which one would you like to start or go, or you're on the agenda?
Yeah. Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
From here? Is that
Well, you have to come to the,
from the podium?
you can either sit on either side of Rod, or you can go to the podium,
Move to the end.
whichever, you know, if you both want to talk, however you want to do it.
I'll let Phil go if I have anything. Just come where I'll let you know.
Good morning, Phil Terwilliger, Sam Nelson, here for the conflict contract. Just to sort of update as to what that is, the primary public defender, Seth Clentz, gets assigned criminal, abuse and neglect, and other cases as needed. And if he or his office has a conflict, they have to go to another attorney. And prior to last year's contract, those were assigned individually, paid individually at the court appointed rate. It's currently 101. I believe next year it will be $107 per hour. So we proposed this contract last year to have a flat fee for that contract or for that conflict representation. And we've been servicing it throughout the year. Just to touch on a couple of things that I've noticed throughout this first year is that A&N cases, abuse and neglect cases, seem to be increasing in volume and in what I'd say longevity. There are a few cases now that are ongoing with the contract that, according to the terms of the last one, that, you know, of course, will carry on regardless. That the best way to put it is that they start off one way and then, due to circumstances, end up extending for a lot longer than anybody anticipated. And so as those things head to things like potential termination of parental rights or other ongoing services, those hearings happen all of the time, contacts with clients all of the time, and have really run it up. Criminal wise, it seems like there's been a pretty steady appointment of criminal cases, but those, I guess I wouldn't, you know, having been on the prosecuting side and seeing it before, I guess I wouldn't call that, haven't noticed a sharp increase in those, particularly on the felony side. But this contract, of course, is to cover everything that, that our firms would require, including, overhead and everything like that. So when considering the contract and its terms, I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. And Sam would be happy to answer any questions as well through this first year.
I have just a couple of things for you if I could. So a little history on the contract. Phil and I talked with Alexis about doing it for a year, and that was to benefit both the county and us, to see if we were the right fit for you and you were the right fit for us, and see if there were things that need to be tweaked. We're now at that point where Phil and I would like to continue for another year if you guys are willing to have us. I will say, and I think Alexis would agree, that we've had kind of a unique situation and where A&Ns have been taking longer. There are some things that are beyond the county's control and beyond my control and the state's attorney's office's control. And they are primarily, I think DSS is overworked and they are struggling constantly with personnel and to maintain what is a higher case volume for A&Ns. Tangential to that, the foster system is overworked. And I have had some cases, Phil is on them and the state's on them, obviously, where we've had kiddos that have had a bad combination of really unique circumstances, and they've had to bounce from foster care to foster care to foster care. And for a lot of different reasons, we haven't been able to reunify them with the parents. And so I think we're seeing more of that here. I am also seeing a little bit more of that in Union counties. My wife is a prosecutor in Lincoln County, and she's seen the same. So those are things that are beyond all of our control. Another thing, you will notice there was a cost increase in the contract. From where I sit, I have cost drivers that are not beyond my control. One is inflation, my employees and their health care, and then their retirement, which we contribute to, and then keeping good employees. And so the inflation that is occurring throughout the country justifies some of that. And so that's kind of where we came up with that number. I will also be telling you that I have an associate named Austin Feltz, who has just started with my office. And so he may be handling some of the caseload down here as well. But I will also be assisting with that. If you have any questions for Phil and I, happy to try to answer them or discuss specific terms with you at your convenience.
There's no question. Can I talk to you all in executive session before you do that?
Okay. No questions up front then, I guess. Sam and Bill. Yeah.
That's included in your guys' packet. I didn't see it.
I had lost that in my email somewhere and just looked at it. I didn't realize we received the final draft, but I sent that out just now.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll just sit down here. I was here before, we had a room full of people dealing with a larger zoning issue. And I don't know if you recall the discussion at that time, but essentially on 466th Avenue, there's a township road. And it crosses property owned by my clients, Lone Spruce Farms Incorporated. They're originally from South Dakota. They now live in Connecticut. There's 319 acres that they've owned for about 23 years, paid taxes on, obviously. And at some point, and Mr. Polly will probably be able to enlighten us greatly, sometime in the late 1980s, 466th Avenue was vacated. And the vacation happened south of a bridge. And this, it left in place approximately 1,350 feet, which passes a cemetery on the left as you go south and leads across the bridge to reach this 8-acre parcel of land that was farmed at one time. Since then, it's been put in CRP, and at some point, with the Vermillion River winding its way through your county, you have a lot of bridges. A lot of bridges that are old. This one became unsafe, and as Rod was able to tell us, at some point, the state said, you need to do something about this bridge. And so it was removed in April, March or April of 2022. My clients say that they were never notified of it. That's their only access they have to this 8-acre parcel. What happened next is we appeared before the commissioners and asked for some assistance to build. I mean, obviously, it would cost significant money to build a bridge here, $750,000 to $1 million. And so the suggestion was to put in a culvert and follow it, cover it with gravel and fill. And at that point, we appeared and requested that. And then Rod investigated the situation and came up with an alternative solution, which there is a gully to the south of this place on the vacated road. And I apologize for that. I apologize for not making sufficient copies of that for everyone because I was busy caring for grandchildren until last night. This is a gully that's to the south of where we're talking about. And so circumstances have changed. What we're asking the county to do is to contribute to the solution. And instead of spending $1 million on a bridge on the north part of this parcel, we're asking just for a culvert to be placed at the county expense at the bottom of that gully. Then my client would provide the fill and the access. The other change in circumstances since the last time I appeared before you is that the land has been re-enrolled in CRP, which takes a lot of the pressure off in terms of access, because in the CRP program, you have to maintain it by mowing and baling the native grasses 2 times during the 10-year contract. So it'll only be 2 times in the next 10 years that we'll have to use this road anyway. And the whole pitch here is that the county does have a duty along with the townships to maintain culverts and bridges. If there's a statutory duty. And so my client would have some rights in that regard. Also, they'd have a constitutional right for denial of access to the property, which is a property right, which invokes constitutional issues on depriving them of property without due process of law or without compensation. And so in order to avoid all that, we're asking the county simply to contribute a culvert, which we understand to be Rod specified the size, he can tell us, but it would cost about $1,500 and my client would take care of the rest. And that's what we're asking for. So I don't know if you have any questions.
How they access this property in the last few years?
Well, it was in CRP. And the last time that the tenant accessed the property, he crossed this bridge. The bridge was still in existence in 2016 and 2017, the last time he had to service the CRP contract.
But it got closed in 2014.
I think the barricade went up in 2014, right?
Right.
Right.
So how did he cross? the
No,
bridge?
I don't think so. I think according to what I heard from Mr. Bergen, the tenant, he crossed it in 2016, which is the last time that he maintained it for CRP. And I understood the barricade came into play after that.
We barricaded him as soon as we closed it, which was in 2014.
Well, he
I'm
got
still
access.
asking How he crossed a closed bridge.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I would be speculating to answer, but I don't know. But I know he did service the contract. I understood it was in 2016 that it was closed, that the barricade was put up. But, and I know this is the tip of the iceberg. This is requiring the county to step in and provide access to landlocked land. You know, it's a $1,500 solution here, but it's the principle that's a major thing. And I understand the county doesn't, you know, the problem with South Dakota law, a lot of times, there's no decisional authority from our Supreme Court on certain issues that come before that. Oddly enough, there is a case, Clay County case, Gregoire versus Clay County. And in that case, it dealt with the county's duty to maintain a bridge. A bridge got blown out by moisture. It was the county, instead of rebuilding the bridge, they put in a culvert and fill. Gregoire appealed at the Supreme Court, so that was an abuse of discretion. The Supreme Court said, no, that's consistent with the county's duty to maintain accessibility and to maintain bridges and culverts. And so that was not an abuse of discretion between two choices, A and B. Here, thanks to Rod's investigation and the proposal to use the south access, that's all we're asking for. And if you defer, if you say, no, we're not going to do anything, then that my client can go back and figure out if he wants to bring an action under whatever rights he has to determine what the law is in this regard, then that's his choice. And I'm just proposing that as a compromise settlement. The next door neighbor would agree, okay, this road's vacated, so the other half of the road went back to the neighbor's family, and they're willing to cooperate. I mean, they will give him an easement on his half of the road where we build that access. And that's the Olson family.
And this parcel is less than 10 acres also, correct?
Yes, it is. So we can't get a statutory right of way created by South Dakota law. So. But I don't know if anybody has any questions, but that's what the pitch is that you help us just build that access. And my client told me he would accept that.
Mike, this picture that you provided, that shows a barricade across on apparently abandoned road. And is there something else I should be seeing here?
No, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Rod took this photo. Yeah, there's a barricade there. This is if you would approach the property from the south on 466. The road's down, it's been done since it was closed in the late 80s. But there is a gully there that we could use to put a culvert in there, provide fill, and we get access.
I think that's I believe that's the little bridge way out in the middle of the field, huh?
Right.
No, I understood there was a gully to the south that you would propose that we use that.
Right, but I didn't take that picture. I don't know where that comes from.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure.
I misunderstood. I thought,
But
I stand corrected then. I thought that this was a photo that Rod provided,
Okay.
but it could very well have been from my client.
we did the aerial, we did the drone and Google to show that little structure on that is on that vacated road, but
But it is true that that would be a means of access. If we put a culvert in there and filled it in, this area I'm describing to the south.
no, where I suggested you put the culvert is to the west of that in the pasture, the people that own the property have.
Well, I mean, I completely misunderstood that, but I mean, but that's really kind of beside the point. The point is that with the provision of that culvert and the fill, then my client, I understand, would have access to this 80 acres. And so that's what we're asking the county to do, is to participate at least with respect to materials in recognition of your statutory obligation for culverts and bridges, so. And I guess I would defer to Rod as to whether he thinks that what I just said would create access based upon his knowledge of the case.
So we're thinking two different things here, I think. You're talking the culvert should go there. And I suggested the culvert go out here in the creek.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever heard that. So. But one way or another, it'd be just, all my client would request is the county to contribute a culvert. So that's really
I'm leaving that up to these people.
right. So unless it would be up to my client to solve the problem with respect to fill and the materials and labor to make it happen. And we'd place the culvert wherever it's most suitable to solve the problem. Well, unless anybody has any questions, I mean, that's our position. We're just requesting some help
Discussing this further or?
in view of that statutory language.
Yeah.
And I realize it's, you know, it's almost like a compromise that there'd be, I mean, we're here in a public meeting and so on and so forth, but it's the precedent that's somewhat scary. I mean, in the obligation, but as understand statute, it says the townships and counties have an obligation. If the space to be filled is larger than a certain amount, then it becomes the county's responsibility. And they can ask the township to contribute.
I'll kick off discussion here. You know, my opinion on this is that if there's an unsafe bridge and we provide notice to parties, I don't think that. I mean, my greater concern here was, God forbid, we left that bridge open in some respect after being told by the state that we cannot continue to do so. In providing notice to the neighboring property owners that we're going to be closing and vacating a bridge, I think that's something within our authority to do so. I think the county was appropriate in doing that. And so, you know, from my standpoint, if the property owner can gain access to their property in some other respect, they have a duty to pursue those remedies. So I don't think we did anything wrong in closing that bridge. I think it was entirely appropriate. And beyond that, then I think it's just a matter of how he gains access to his property and if he has other remedies or avenues to do so. Not necessarily a direct result of the county's actions of closing that bridge for a safety concern. So that's where I think we come down at this juncture. And beyond that, if you all, you know, want to assist him in gaining some access to the south or some other avenue, I would defer to you all in that regard.
I do have a question of if we should assist this, what opens the gate to anyone else on a closed road, on a closed bridge requesting assistance? I know this has its own little caveats, but
I think that, first of all, my clients claim they didn't receive any notice. But as Mr. Mockler said, I mean, there's a barricade in front of the road. So, I mean, you know, I mean, there's physical notice that the access was blocked. But I think there's a clash of rights here. I think there's a statutory right that my client has to access, and there's a constitutional right to property, which is a Fifth Amendment concern. At the same time, the county does have a duty to maintain bridges, and then pursuant to State versus Howard, they have a duty to maintain a safe bridge. You know, so there's just a lot of interplay of rights that come into play. The county's duty to provide safe access and to remove bridges that are unsafe. At the same time, my clients, without relying upon a neighbor to get an easement, is denied access to his property. So it's a tough case. It's a tough case, and I don't think that I can tell you that it wouldn't open the door to cases just like Gregoire versus Clay County Commissioners, where people come in front of you and ask you to improve or restore access to property. But I think that's the state law. So I don't think it opens a floodgate. I think it recognizes a floodgate. It recognizes that you have a county with the Vermilion River winding its way through it, and you've got a lot of old bridges. So you've got a real problem. I don't have a soft, easy answer for that.
yeah,
This
and
isn't
I think-
on Vermilion River also either.
No, it's not. But that's my example. Just like in Turner County, there's just a lot of old bridges. We have the same sort of issues that kind of pop up. And in Vermilion, you've got, it's true, it's not on the Vermilion River. All I'm saying is that you've got a lot of bridges in this county. A lot of them are old. And South Dakota law, maybe the answer is to the South Dakota legislature to provide some funding to solve that problem. Otherwise, it goes on to who? It goes to the county and the township, which in essence is the taxpayers.
So is the state.
Pardon me?
So's the legislature, if you ask them to spend money. that's-
Oh, yeah, that's right.
also-
Well, maybe they can go to Uncle Sam and it's magic.
Yeah, I share Phyllis's concerns. And, you know, you called it a floodgate and I think it probably is. And, you know, because there is pending litigation, or possibility of litigation, I propose that we discuss your offer in executive session.
Hard facts make compromises. That's all. I guess that's how I would answer your question. So,
And I appreciate your, you know, I appreciate your clients' issues.
okay, that's about all I would have to say. And I'll put it in your bailiwick and then you make the decision and we'll proceed as my client wishes to do so. So, okay. Well, thank you. for
Thank
listening.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Rod. And Paul. if you want to come up. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Paul's from Alteg, they're the company that did our master transportation plan and they got it wrapped up, I guess.
So they're not gonna be able to see this online, correct? Jerry?
No.
Okay. Which is, I mean, that's the way it is.
We can post
Yeah.
the presentation on the project website. To be viewed, normally what we do.
Okay.
Thanks for having, let me grab that. My name is Paul Deutsch. I work for Alteg Engineers. We're the consultant that put together the Clay County Master Transportation Plan. It's good to be here with you today. I'm going to present the findings and the recommendations from the plan. The purpose of this presentation is to reintroduce the project, discuss what we came to find, and then help answer any questions or comments that the commission may have. Right now, the draft report for this plan is currently under review by the study advisory team. They've had 3 weeks to comment on it. As of today, we'll soon be addressing their comments and putting together the final report. The Clay County Master Transportation Plan was facilitated by the South Dakota Department of Transportation. The study was initiated by Clay County in an application for planning and research funding. Other partners in the study include the Federal Highway Administration and the consultant Alteg Engineers. And then we have the study advisory team, which guides the development of the study. Representatives for the SAT include representatives from Clay County as well as South Dakota DOT. So a master transportation plan is a 20-year study. It looks into the future and it serves as a guide for the county and the future of the transportation network. It specifically is reviewing issues and needs that the county faces now as well as into the future, and it helps guide decision making. We are about a year into the study. We kicked off by doing some data collection. We worked with Rod. We identified issues, needs, opportunities, and then we developed strategies for improvements. And the draft of the final report, which is our stage right now, we're between the draft plan and the final plan. As I mentioned, the study advisory team is reviewing that, which includes 2 of the commissioners on the board. And we will be addressing those comments. And throughout this entire process, we've been guided by input from the study advisory team, stakeholders, and the public, where we've taken comments through the project website, and we also held 2 public meetings. So the first step of the project was to identify issues and needs. This was completed as a result of extensive existing conditions review and public feedback. These are the primary issues and needs that we identified. I won't go into detail at the moment, but hopefully some of these should resonate with all of you to some extent. Our needs the issues and needs that we identified were bridge replacement, road conditions, road geometry and safety, flooded roads, demand for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, urban growth and development, jurisdictional ownership, and prioritizing improvements with available funding. The next step in the study was to address those issues and needs in the form of project planning, where we'll cover corridor improvements, bridge improvements, and then overall enhancement projects list to prioritize projects as funding becomes available. Project type prioritized by the public in our public survey was existing road maintenance and improvement. With our focus on that as the main priority, we know that some roads do fine with minimal maintenance, but funding is not available to maintain every road to the extent that everyone wishes. So as part of this plan, we developed what is called a major roads plan, which helps the county prioritize the most critical roads, which require the biggest investments in road infrastructure maintenance. I will cover the major roads plan a little bit more later. Next, we have bridge improvements as well as a bridge replacement plan. Replacing county-owned bridges as they deteriorate is a great challenge. Fortunately, Clay County has recently become eligible for state funding through the SDDOT's Bridge Improvement Grant Program, or it's also called Big Grants. As part of this study, we put together a bridge replacement plan that prioritizes bridges for replacement. And what we did is we sorted them by what we expect or estimate the bridge improvement scores to be. So the county applies for bridge improvement grants and the state reviews all the applications and divvies out funding based on how the bridges score. And so they assign what is called big scores to bridges. And the scores, they take a number of factors, but the most important one is the condition, as well as if it's posted for load ratings. So bridges that are in poor condition or have load limits on them generally score high, but there's other factors like how much traffic drives on the bridges each day. If the bridge were to be closed, how far does a traveler have to go around? As well as some other criteria that can vary depending on how much the county wants to help pay for the share of the cost. And some others. So we estimated some scores as part of this plan to help the county identify which bridges will likely score well in the future when you're applying for these bridges or for these bridge replacements. And so we took out of all the bridges, we picked the 21 bridges that are currently in fair or poor condition. Bridges that were in good condition, we didn't put into the plan because they're doing okay right now. This slide here shows the top 10 scores at the moment. And we recommend that Clay County continue to apply for this funding as it's the most effective way to get funding for bridge replacements. We also have the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, which will help fund additional replacement. I don't believe the state has exactly decided how that money will filter down to the county, but we do expect that there will be more funding for bridges at the county level. And now that the county is eligible for bridge improvement grants, we do think that Clay County is in good position to take advantage of some of that extra money.
So how did we just become eligible for the big program?
One of the key criteria for eligibility is having a 5-year highway and bridge plan. I believe it was just a couple months ago that county completed that.
Haven't we always had one?
Yeah.
Not approved by the state. Well, I've always had a 5-year plan, but we never had bridges that met the criteria to get in the big program, so I thought it was a waste of time till now. And all day Brad was down in presented that 5-year plan. September or something, because I think it had to be in by the first October or something like that.
That sounds about right. Next, we have what is, and I put it on your desk in front of you, is our enhancement projects list, a map of projects. These primarily are proposed to help address those primary issues and needs that we identified. A lot of these projects were brought to us in very early stages of the project. As part of the proposal and the application process, certain roads were identified as having special issues. Entire corridors or specific locations. So we looked at those and we came up when we developed some alternatives for improvements for some of those locations, and those are all shown here. We looked at all of those locations, and the first thing we did is we screened them for a purpose and need to make sure that it is actually a legitimate project that you could undertake. It wouldn't just be a waste of money to improve something that is doing fine. So every one of these passed that test, and then next we prioritize them. As funding becomes available, some of the costs are very high for long corridor improvements. So we prioritize them kind of into the future, whether it's a short term, like a 0 to 5 year project, 5 to 10 year would be a midterm length, or greater than 10 years would be something that would be in the long range. And those are usually projects that have high costs associated with them. And there's a table to go along with that map, and that table, in addition to tables that you'll find in the report, describe these projects. They describe the location, the issues, and the alternatives to make the improvements, as well as the estimated cost to do them. Oh, there's the table up there. Okay. For the next topic, we'll talk about standards development. Standards and documents that are provided as part of this plan will really help guide the county with future decision making, and will help answer questions that come up regarding when and how projects should be implemented. We have a major roads plan, road design standards, various administrative and development standards, as well as a bicycle and pedestrian plan. The term standards development, I don't believe is obviously understood, so I hope to clarify what that is by explaining how standards are a path to answer common questions, especially around development. I think that maybe you found yourself asking some of these questions, and if you have these types of questions, I'd like you to think about standards and development and think of the Clay County Master Transportation Plan, because we have provided either direct answers to some of these questions or at least resources to help answer those questions. So I'll go through them, and you probably have had. Which roads and bridges have the highest priority for funding? Which roads can be part of a future connected bike route? How wide does a bridge need to be on certain types of roads? Where should new driveways and intersections be allowed on a county highway? What is an acceptable level of traffic delay due to increased traffic demand? When should a gravel road be paved? When and how should the county plan to transfer jurisdiction to the state, city, or township? Should the county consider changing a road to minimum maintenance designation? Every one of these questions can be helped answer by this plan. For the major roads plan, what we did is we prioritized the most critical county roads to help guide future designs and project planning. So the 4 classifications that we created are county paved priority routes, county paved routes, county gravel, and local roads. Think of this map as basically identifying a hierarchy of county-owned roads in terms of what is the most important road to what is the least important road. And when you think of that, think about where is the money going when you're working on these roads and improving them. To go along with the major roads plan, we developed road design standards for each one of those 4 classifications. If you are constructing new roads or reconstructing existing roads, modern design standards should be used. And I'd like to draw attention to two of the four sections that we've drawn up here on the graphic. So the top image is for a county paved priority route. The bottom is for county paved route. Both of these are paved routes, but the slight difference is the shoulder width, which I'd like to draw attention because shoulder width has multiple benefits to drivers and other users, especially safety. For drivers, shoulders provide more space for things like emergency parking, evasive maneuvers, and other safety benefits. It provides space for maintenance vehicles. It provides space for mail operations. It can provide space for work zone work being conducted in a work zone. It also provides space for bicyclists to bike outside the driving lane, which is why it can also be designated as a bike route. Widening shoulders is still an expensive improvement, especially for long distances, which is why we've only assigned it to what we believe is the most critical high priority routes in the county, instead of just widening shoulders for every route. Here are some of the other standards documents that are provided as part of the study. These are all topics that Clay County asked for assistance with in the early goings of this study. The first topics shown on the left, these all help with management of existing infrastructure. Guidance on jurisdictional transfer, surface type changes, and changing maintenance designations. The two topics shown on the right relate to growth and development, particularly when new accesses should be allowed on the county highway network. So we provided within the document some access management guidelines. Those guidelines start kind of from a template that the state sets aside for their own roads. Many counties use that as a guide to come up with something similar. So we provided some access location criteria to assist with that. It's not a policy on when it should be or when accesses should or should not be implemented, but it is a good start. I think that an access management policy could be something that Clay County could consider in the future. And then the final feature of the study is an exciting proposed bicycle and pedestrian plan, which also has a trails master plan that we got a lot of great feedback from during our public engagement. We realize that there's a great potential for trails as well as on-street bike routes to connect the communities of Clay County. And the public is interested in these types of networks. The quotations on the right are some of the things that were said during early public engagement regarding this topic. So for a comprehensive trails master plan, we provided a vision for what could happen in Clay County. This is a network of trails that would benefit the county for generations through increased physical activity options, quality of life, tourism, and economic development. This design is very flexible and it doesn't have to start out with anything major. To keep costs down, it could start out as picking a route that you think is the easiest to implement. It could start out as a loose surface footpaths, single track trails, or mountain biking trails, all of which would require minimal maintenance. And depending on the demand, they could be widened and have more permanent surfacing. These trails could really return a substantial economic and health benefit to the whole county. Everything you see on this map is conceptual, but we would love to know what you think about this idea. As I mentioned, that the public was very receptive to these ideas, and we really had good feedback and good discussion about what we show here. We've also show some paved shoulders to be recommended for some county priority routes that could be classified as a bike route if the shoulders are widened to at least 4 feet wide. All of these would be constructed over the long term. And to recap, a summary of the overall recommendations made by this study are project implementation list featuring corridor improvements, bridge improvements, and enhancement projects. These would all be great resource for the county to help plan projects for the next 20 years. We also provided a conceptual and comprehensive trails master plan. It's recommended that the county use new standards and guidelines provided to help manage development and help guide the process of implementing planned improvement projects. It's also recommended that the county begin proactive discussions about jurisdictional transfer. In the study, we provided candidate roads for jurisdictional transfer. We've highlighted those to get you started on that sort of thing. It's also recommended to further invest in pavement condition assessments to better understand how your road conditions are tracking over time. It'll also give you an idea of how roads are responding to different types of maintenance and rehabilitation. We understand that Clay County has started doing more microsurfacing projects to go along with their chip seal projects. We think that that is a good idea. And if you were to conduct pavement conditions assessments, you would have a really good idea of how those are holding up over time. The process for pavement conditions assessments would be similar to what you do for bridge assessments, so that you understand what road is the right road to apply the right treatment at the right time, which is kind of a philosophy of getting the most bang for your buck. And then we recommend to maintain this document every 5 to 10 years if possible, to keep it current and beneficial to the county. Although it is a 20-year plan, things in the world can change quickly and it can be outdated before you know it, especially with all innovation and technology, pandemics, whatever have you. A lot can change. So updating it every 5 to 10 years is recommended if you're able to. And then we also have a number of other recommendations that are all listed in the report. If you have time, please take a chance to look at it. It's posted on our project website, which I'll share with you. So for the next steps, we've already presented to you today. We are taking in comments from the study advisory team, which we're going to incorporate from the draft report to the final report. But we're also looking to see what comments and questions the county have about the study.
I've got one.
Sure.
This bicycle pedestrian plan that you have here. These are just going cross country.
These trails that are shown are all essentially limited to within Clay County,
Right.
but occasionally there are ways to tie in to trails outside the county. Does that answer your question?
No. You're just going across people's property.
Oh,
Right.
right. So it's very conceptual. The routes were kind of developed from a very high level terrain assessment. We looked at destinations beginning to end, cities, towns, parks, rivers. So the locations that you can put them are pretty much anywhere, but you want to put them in places that people will use them or places that people want to use them. Are they across people's property? Yes.
So I guess my follow-up question to that would be how the feasibility of that is non-existent. So I'm just wondering why we're wasting our time on that.
Yeah, so as somebody who's actually done some of this trail development in other places. The reason a property owner would say yes is because it increases the value of their land.
You're kidding, right?
No.
I'm just gonna cut the fences and allow people to walk across my property.
So this is actually evidence-based, right? So I know that most people, almost everybody's initial reaction is always no way, no how. And then they realize the benefit to them, and not every landowner is that going to be true for. But for example, like along the Missouri River, there are places where landowners will almost certainly say no. And, you can kind of go around that spot and then continue along the trail. Yankton County and Union County have a bunch of these. There is money available to develop them. When I was up at, the conference that the South Dakota Association of County Commissions had, there were engineering firms from all over, and you know, and there were state agencies, and you know, there's actually money out there that doesn't get used. For example, they told me if we applied for a multi-use trail, which would include, you know, the ability for like ATVs and so on to go across, that would be, you know, that money is just available. They said, you apply, you get it.
Great.
So there is money available. Other counties do this, and it's incredibly popular. I mean, once these routes are in, they are super, super popular. And they're amazingly well used.
But you want
And
to talk about evidence-based. Here's evidence-based. We have 2 weeks of deer hunting every year. I'm constantly checking fences and gates. Now you think I'm gonna be up for doing that 365 days a year? And I'm not the only one. I'm not even gonna speak from a small minority. I'm gonna speak for 99% of the landowners that these trails will affect. If you honestly think that they're gonna let people just walk across their property, whatever day of the year, whatever time, you're kidding yourself.
well, not every landowner is going to want to do it, but I spend several weeks every year doing cross-country hiking in a variety of places. And it becomes an economic development tool for regions that do it. It brings people from all over the world who want to do cross-country hiking.
Well, I think
Um,
what's amazing on this is the people who probably want them don't own any of this land.
That may be true. I mean, I spent a week, last month,
Betty, I
the month
spend every
before.
day listening to people complain about somebody going across their property.
And this, obviously, you cannot force anybody to agree. And this is not a commitment to force people to agree. This is a goal that says it would be great if people allowed recreational easements.
But we're spending money on this conceptual design. I'm just looking at time better spent on something we can actually accomplish.
Well, I think the money that went into this, right, that a master transportation plan includes pedestrian and bicycle planning. And so we've got a master transportation plan here. I would suggest that we accept it. I mean, I think everybody needs to do quite a bit more reading. I think that there's a lot of public support for it. I think we should see this as a possibility, as a goal, as something to explore over time. Takes a lot of education to do these things. You know, one of the trails that I worked on, we actually took landowners to visit on a bus, a similar trail. And, you know, spend some time talking to city managers, county people, and landowners to find out what the impact of this would be on them. There's also technology that makes an enormous difference. The hike I took this fall for a week, we went across sheep meadows and cattle enclosures. And they actually have a system of self-closing gates. And you know, it's just technology, right? They don't have issues. They don't lose their sheep. They don't lose their cattle. They don't complain about it. It works famously.
I have that technology already, because I'm the only one that opens the gate. So I know it doesn't get opened.
Right. But you know what so they have styles, for example, people walk over it. You know, I'm not saying that that we have to do this. I'm saying that we ought to put it in the plan as a goal. I think there's a lot of support out there for this. And yeah, and it doesn't cost us anything to have that as a goal. And I think, the projects never happen unless you plan them. I mean, they've got to be in a plan. And if you don't have it in the plan, there's no chance you'll ever get any money. There's no chance that a single landowner will say yes. There's no chance of anything happening. And complete transportation plans nationally now provide pedestrian and yeah. And so I mean, the other part of it, right, is that every year, the first warm day in the spring, there's a group that walks from the top of Spirit Mound down to Clay County Park to the river. And it's about 12 miles. We do it every year, and we do it entirely on public land. And so it's possible that you can route some of these trails across gravel roads, for example. But it's not going to happen unless unless there's a goal there. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. It's one of my favorite hikes every year.
I hope all the landowners are paying attention.
This is not a commitment.
I know. It's not a
Exactly.
commitment,
This is,
But the city had a conceptual plan too of a bike path along the river. And the river flooded it out, plus the landowners along it were not happy. So Betty's saying there's a lot of support for these trails. I just hope the landowners know exactly what we're doing up here.
this is really a conversation starter. And
Boy,
there
has it.
will be some opposition, understandable. There can be many arguments that the benefits outweigh the negatives. A lot of times, something like this is really just in somebody's head. Small discussions on the side. Wouldn't it be great, that location is perfect for a trail, that location is perfect for a mountain biking trail or a path of some kind. Now there is something to actually look at, like, hey, let's see what's actually been done. We do have something on paper now. It's just a vision, it's conceptual, none of it is permanent. But if there is enough people that want to do something like this sort of thing can gain momentum. I think Betty speaks well to it. I'm not the bike and pedestrian expert on our study. Unfortunately, Will Kearns is that expert. He was not able to be here today. Will visited. He is enamored by the geography, the beauty of Clay County. He thinks that there's a lot of great opportunities. He thinks it would really draw people and give people a sense of pride on what Clay County could do. But it would be a long process, and it may start with baby steps. It may start with trails that are much more feasible. It may start with locations where there is few, if any, landowners to deal with. It could be on county property, and obviously we want costs to be as low as possible if that's the case.
I was the other commissioner on this particular committee, and I think that you're right. And looking at all of the trails on this was something that we're Will, I think especially had looked at possible destinations, and he had listened to, there were folks that came to our public meetings, and the bike trail was probably the most discussed part of those public decisions, which were meetings that were all here in Vermillion, admittedly, which it didn't include landowners out in the townships necessarily. I'm trying to think of one, but I think including this as part of the master transportation plan is appropriate. It was done in Union County, for instance, and there were a few trails that were built in Union County because of that, mainly at federal funding. I don't see that I don't have much direct evidence, but I haven't seen much in the way of problems with inappropriate use of folks throwing trash along the bike trails or trespassing on private land. Haven't seen much of that on in those. In looking at these, yeah, I think that I think you're right. There's a few of these plans that would eventually pass muster that would end up being developed. There are a few that are a good idea, I think, that to help with the use of especially public land to help as far as health and fitness and biking. I keep thinking of the weekly during summer months, the weekly bike trek to Burbank for spaghetti night. Bike down and back, burn off what you ate while you were there, in part, probably not altogether. But I think having it as part of this transportation plan is appropriate. Without landowner buy-in, of course, that's not, it's not really a viable thing. I think back to last year, there was a proposed bike and hiking path on an existing railroad right away up in Charles Mix County, and the adjacent landowners killed it. They said, even though there's public access from point A to point B, that and yes, the bike path's going to be on that old railroad grade that's got fence lines on either side all along it with no egress onto private land. The some of the adjacent landowners really had strong opinions. They didn't want that converted into a bike path. They went to the commission and the commission squashed the idea, even though it was completely along a railroad grade, which would be pretty self-limiting as far as access onto adjacent land. So there's good arguments on both sides. I think there are certain parts of this plan that could be that we in the future will probably want to look at and develop, especially some that are perhaps along some of our county roads to make bicycling safer and hiking safer from one place to another. And as a side benefit, make it a little safer sometimes for vehicle traffic as well. But as far as your objections, I think that they're well placed. That yeah, it's only a few. There's probably a few spots along this within this plan that are really viable for us. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't be in this plan. They should be.
You
Is
mentioned,
it possible to put in a statement that these paths that go cross country are highly conceptual and need a lot of work and planning of landowners and potential users in the future, just stating this is not in any way in stone. It is just
we try to
suggestions
put
think about.
conceptual, maybe I can go back to it. We try to list that everything on that map is conceptual and big, maybe not big enough red letters. We
Yeah.
mentioned that in the report,
On
that
this
it is
part, it
conceptual.
red letters,
Yeah.
so that it doesn't create an anti-plan.
Yeah, and I think the guy who did most of the design work on the trail systems, Will Kearns, who's, I mean, this is really an expertise he has. He makes that very, very, very clear. That you know, these are conceptual and that there would need to be a lot of consultation and agreements, and that, you know, not everyone is going to be feasible. And you know, he's really, really, really clear about that. So if, you know, if he can put what he said in the meeting into writing, I think that would mollify a lot of fears. Yeah.
It has to be, like he says, it has to be championed. It has to be led by someone or some group that is highly motivated to convince everybody else that it's a good idea. It's not something that can just be stamped, said, we're doing this, it's our way or the highway. It's, no, we want everybody to be a part of this and have it a good thing. And we try not to have negative connotations with it. I just wanted to respond to something Richard had said, that Union County has trails. We did develop a similar trails master plan for Union County. None of those trails that we proposed have been constructed. It's my understanding that all trails in Union County are outside of Union County's right of way and would probably be within either cities or maybe private or maybe state.
Yeah, those were developed before your master plan had been done.
And then you mentioned, I think it was key, you mentioned feasibility. That would be the next step is. What is how many of these are feasible? That would be a feasibility study. You would try to figure out which are the ones that, is reasonable cost, reasonable cooperation. Is it constructible? Is it maintainable? That a feasibility study would go a long way to help answer that question. Instead of it just being, this is impossible, or, back and forth, like it is possible, it isn't possible. A feasibility study would help answer that question. So that would be the next step.
Yeah, and
Even then,
workarounds.
You wouldn't even be committing anything with a feasibility.
Yeah.
study.
And workarounds. I mean, sometimes there's a landowner who's, for their own reasons, really unhappy about it, and you work around that. You can't force anybody, right? To allow a right of way. It's entirely a negotiation between landowners and planners. So, but unless there's something that says, yeah, this is something that we should think about, right? Nobody's going to think about it. And the only way to get money for trails is to have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you don't get the money.
All of the study documents are posted on the project website. If you would like to review them, I encourage everybody to check them out. Lastly, I would request that the commission at some point make a motion to accept the plan. SDDOT recommends that terminology, accept rather than adopt. Just in case you were to inadvertently adopt something that you didn't intend, because there is a lot that is in the plan. So it doesn't have to be today. It can be the final report is finalized and the study advisory team approves it.
Any other questions?
No, there's just so much that was under discussion and that was looked at that's not included here. Some of the things that were pointed out during the earlier presentations is that Clay County actually has an excellent safety record on our transportation net. Those sorts of things were well pointed out. There are a few really problem intersections and stretches that were pointed out that we should be looking at it over time as money allows. There's also part of this, a fairly good part of it that was addressed early on was flood mitigation, where there's stretches for county roads that are repeatedly washed out and have to be rebuilt year after year, increasingly so in the last several years. And there are a few, what's the name for the concrete mat that we put down, Rod?
Fleximat.
The Fleximat. We've already started to test Fleximat as a means of hardening road grades, so they're not washed out automatically every time the Vermilion River decides to exceed its banks. That was addressed here, and other ways and thoughts and how we might develop that over the future was addressed here. So fixing just on just criticizing a bicycle and pedestrian plan is a small part of what this document entailed.
And I think it's going to be a really valuable roadmap for the highway department, in terms of, prioritizing projects and so on. And I think it's going to help us. It's actually going to help us get funding. In conversations I had with state DOT, over the last couple of years about funding. They've basically said, look, you know, initially they said, well, you don't have a 5-year plan, so you're not even eligible for, you know, a lot of this bridge funding. And we've fixed that. But I think this plan is one of those things that's going to put us higher on the priority list for state funds. I think it's, you know, it says that we're serious about about transportation and transportation safety. So I think it's going to be a real asset, especially to the highway department over the next, you know, 20 years.
I do have one question for Ron. Do you have this in front of you, this master plan? Do
Go ahead, what?
you have this master plan in front of you?
Yeah.
The pamphlet on page. Major roads plan. Page 14. You got it in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay, so at the corner of 305 and 469th Street. Is that a common gravel? It's painted in here. It's
Well, it's small print.
So just north of 305 Street.
Yeah. For half a mile.
So that's one example of something that is documented as a county maintained roadway.
Yeah,
Rod can answer the question if it's actually county maintained.
no, it isn't, but
Okay, because there's like
Back
4
it-
spots on there that are.
yeah, like Olson. We used to do maintenance there for the township. And same way up on the north end. But that has,
Okay.
like in 93, when I started, was about the last year we did that. But 305 and the county line. No, you said 469th though.
Yeah. Yeah, I see the Olson one's on here too,
Yeah.
but this one's just to the northwest of the Olson one. Yeah.
There are some
Yeah, I
roads
don't
that
know.
are in the DOT's records are Clay County roads. And sometimes over time, agreements are made and maybe maintenance is transferred, but nobody ever tells the DOT. So as part of this plan, we highlight roads like this that kind of stand out, like what's going on there as a candidate to formally transfer jurisdiction and let the DOT know so they can update the records.
Yeah, because it's not on any of our,
Well, I didn't think it was, but I just. I
On
want
any
somebody
of
to
our
come in with this
road
map and
maps.
go, you're supposed to maintain that.
Looks to me like that's something that needs to be cleaned up. Find out what she's, you know.
and it probably is, but has been cleaned up, but where they got their map from, I guess,
Well, he said the DOT is what they're.
yeah,
going
and
Sure,
deal,
locally, yeah, we know.
I mean, and CCOG sends us out a map every year, and I don't believe that little stretch is that map, because we're supposed to tell them what we improved. If something changed from gravel to asphalt to gravel. And I fill that out every year, and unless I skipped over it, I do not remember seeing that on.
Yeah, see,
On
there's a
that
number
map,
of places like that where this study identified places where the state database was out of date.
Yeah,
There were some bridges that we had actually not just abandoned, but had removed. That they had in the state's database still had as being present and not torn out. Well, there were 2 of those, right, Ron?
I just looked at the bridge thing, I believe I came up with 3 that we addressed at the public meeting, but. You know, because one of them we fixed this year. The 150 006, the second one,
Yeah, that would be the 3rd one. You're right.
and then the Dakota Street Bridge still shows poor on here. And we already rehabbed that a couple, 3 years ago. And there's one other one I thought, but I don't see it right now.
So there were,
Street bridges.
Is good.
Sometimes
it's good now.
there can be a lag in the bridge records that we have. Uh, I would say up to 2 years. Probably not more.
Yeah,
And I
that's,
think we
that's
looked at
the
Dakota
issue.
Street and we were never able to quite figure out like who had the most up-to-date version. So we decided to stay consistent, use every bridge record that we had at the same time. Instead of trying to, pick a new inspection that kept coming across as we were completing the study. Occasionally Rod brought to my attention that like, hey, we replaced that bridge with a double culvert. And since it's less than 20 feet, we're not even maintaining it anymore. It's now township responsibility. Those aren't on there anymore. Like if it's not a county bridge, like we took it off the list. Or if it was closed or abandoned, we made sure to note that. But otherwise, bridge inspection conditions were all pulled at the same time. Some of them are 1, 2, or 3, potentially 3 years old, but I would think 1 to 2 years.
Well, the Dakota Street Bridge is 4 or 5 years old.
Well, about 3.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we did talk
Since
about
we-
that one a
since
little
we
bit.
did rehab.
And it is, that's all.
Yeah. Well, no,
I think it is around 3.
no,
Leo was still on the board.
yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
It was like 18 or 19, one of those 2 years, so 4. But yeah, just the way every 2 years they get inspected and apparently that wasn't, it's in the inspections, but it wasn't included on that one. I pointed that out several times and it's still on there, but
And it's possible, is that bridge shown as fair condition or poor condition?
no, yeah, that's the 117,214. You have it as
Oh, it's
4. But no
Right, so
posted.
I couldn't find a record to contradict this. Doesn't mean it's not true. It may have been improved, it may be in fair or even good condition at this time, but I couldn't find a record of it.
Okay.
So I just left it as is.
I guess my point is that was one benefit of this study is that it helped us find places where the state's records were at least out of date, which could affect us funding wise in the future and planning wise.
Yeah, and on a joint jurisdiction with a city inside the city, they identified a couple of streets that the state still shows that are ours, but they haven't been. And I got in touch with Jose and I believe did you or Will was gonna get a hold of them too, and we just have never got together. But down here in the corner on that road map there, those green ones are the ones that at one time since I've worked here, we did maintain those. But we haven't for like 25 years, but on the state records still shows that those are Clay County roads.
So how do we get those updated for this map then?
Jose and I,
For the final draft.
oh, I don't know if we can.
That would be hard because you would have to get it formally changed before the final report came out. But we do point out that they are candidates for formal transfer. We believe that like this can't be like kind of, these roads are right in the middle of Vermillion. They're urban cross sections. Presumably they're maintaining them. I think everyone has an understanding of whose road it is, but in the DOT's records, it's shown as Clay County Road. So does that mean, what was the formal transfer written down on? Is it as simple as sending that to the DOT so they can update their database? Or was it just a handshake? There is nothing written down and we need to do that. And so if that's the case, this plan provides a template to show that agreement. We call it a memorandum of understanding, essentially. We understand this road to be yours and this road to be ours. We provide a template for that. So that can be a form of kind of your record. that ultimately gets sent to the DOT, but it is a good idea to get those records updated. You mentioned that you don't want it shown on the map. I'll probably reach out to the SDDOT and ask them, you know, what the best way to show that is, because technically it is in their record, and that's what we're showing on the map is their records or their database. So I don't want to put something that's different than that, but maybe we show it as different color as, you know, under consideration for formal transfer or is recognized as Vermillion Road at this time. We can.
Just because the DOT doesn't have it on their records.
Doesn't mean
I
it
mean-
didn't happen,
I know, I mean, the map's not showing what's actually happening today.
right? And I don't have a record of what is happening today. Other than, you know, verbal.
But we know the map is wrong. I guess that's my point, is we know the map is wrong today. How do we finalize something we know is wrong? At any point in time until it's corrected.
Yeah, so I like that idea of, and I think it answers that. I like the idea of, you know, acknowledging that some roads were not formally transferred, or some road records are not reflected by DOT, and maybe designate them in a different color, which then gives us a list of, you know, conversation topics with DOT, so we can straighten that out.
Maybe it should be more descriptive or more inclusive, Betty, even that it would be, those places would be labeled as discrepancy in records
Yes.
between state and county offices. So it'd just be a different color. It says, hey, this stuff's in
Mhm.
dispute at this point, or not in dispute, but conflict of record.
Yep, and that would be something Rod could probably work with you on, right? Finding, you know, identifying places where DOT does not reflect what we know to be true, and having those in a different color would really be helpful.
We show, I'm not sure what, I think the enhancement map that Rod is looking at with the different colors, we do show roads highlighted in green as candidates for jurisdictional transfer. That doesn't tell you, you know, some within those, you know to be not your road. Some of them are just, oh, you know what, we need to talk about this in the future as Vermillion continues to expand. I think that maybe some of the other maps, like the major roads plan, maybe we address that with another feature that says, you know, jurisdictional ownership is not formalized, or we could, you know, use a certain
In question.
or not well understood, you know, database may not be up to date, something of that nature, to help clarify that.
Rod, who was the engineer on Cottonwood Park Bridge?
Cottonwood Park.
Dakota Street?
No, it was all taken. Right? Yeah,
That-
Brad, to do the
resurfacing,
rehab.
the rehab.
And then at the same time, we fixed the south. And I believe Alteg was that also that. You know, the south abutment washed out during the flood, the 11 flood. So we did that all at the same time, and I'm pretty sure Brad was engineer on that one.
That's what I thought. I thought it was the first one. So your firm should have that paperwork.
So the question is, was a bridge inspection completed after the improvement?
Yes,
And if it has been, then.
but your company
Then I'll
didn't do that.
No,
Your company engineered the rehab. Right. Johnson Engineering out of Yankton have done the inspection.
Right, so even if they've done a bridge inspection, doesn't necessarily mean that that record that you have got sent to the National Bridge Inventory, which is where I pulled all the data from. So I understand, that bridge in particular, I will double back on that one and get it updated if there's a record of it. And if not, we'll go searching for it.
I have a question. Is there a page that tells what all each number is for?
The table on the next page.
No. These,
So the categories are on the far left column. Whether it's a safety improvement, a flooding mitigation project, jurisdictional transfer, general enhancements. You can line those up with the numbers, and then there's a description, and it's a little small and on paper, but on a computer, it's much easier to read.
I have a question. How does this affect, if this map is not completed correctly? How does this affect the funding that we apply for?
I'm not entirely sure if I understand the question. So the map with the projects, that's just a generic non-committal plan. They're really just for you to see and potentially pick and choose, you know, what you want to do or what you can do. Some of the priorities may change. You may have a project that we show as a long-term priority, all of a sudden it's a short-term priority. You know, you can move in and change those. You're not committed to those projects, but it's a good resource for thinking about projects down the line. Especially, I mean, it's a little bit different than your, you know, your maintenance projects, your microsurfacing, chip seals, overlays. Those are all important things. We don't really show those in the plan because those are more of a 5-year maintenance improvement plan. These are like enhancement plans. So think of these as like maybe non-essential but preferable projects. So if funding becomes available for certain types of projects or a project that you want, this is your resource to.
So in other words, basically, even though we know that this maps are not correct completely, it's not gonna affect any funding that we put in.
Probably not.
Okay,
If
probably
If
not.
the
or not.
DOT has something on record that is different than what everyone else says is the case, that could potentially impact funding.
Okay,
So I don't
so
want
then,
to make
then
it,
we do want the maps up to date then, because just what you just got done saying that we're probably not gonna get it if the maps aren't correct.
I won't commit either way.
Okay.
I would say that getting everything formally recorded is in your best interest.
Okay,
For that sort.
that's what I was getting at.
Yep.
At the first.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think you're right, that really has to happen.
Yeah, because
Getting-
otherwise,
Getting the recording
otherwise we
correct.
won't get the funding. Adding the category of in question,
Mhm.
categorization in question should address that, Mike.
Well,
I would think.
somewhat. Yeah, but the things that need funding, I think the funding issues are gonna largely occur in those potential projects that are already labeled as poor. I think it's really the upside projects that have already been done that are not recorded. So I'm trying to think of how it could be a problem. If we've upgraded something already, then, we probably don't need more funding for it.
And I think that question's a good one, especially because we should accept this as being a plan that addresses all of these projects and possible problems as what's current at the date that we accept the plan, that we accept that plan. And so it should be true and correct to that point. The questionable, the jurisdiction questions and those sorts of things could go a long ways to making sure that is true. But I think everyone in each of the entities, federal highway, state highway, our commission, all should recognize that this plan is a snapshot in time. It's what we understood to be true at the date that we signed off on this. 6 months later, we could end up with a flood that changes everything. So I think with those two truths in mind, it's a good idea to make sure that it's true and correct at the time that we sign off on it. And please help us with that.
I probably will get with Rod. You probably have the best understanding of which roads, quote unquote, are in question. To get a list or at least a visual, so that we can mark those boundaries out.
I have a question for you guys. when you have a joint jurisdiction meeting. Or anything like the roads that. We take care of ever question. I'm just wondering,
Because joint jurisdiction is just zone.
that's just zoning. Cause I was wondering if. Maybe that's where it should be brought up, the transfer. But I guess Jose would be the first place to start. But I mean, not all these are. In Vermillion either. A couple guys sitting right behind me have. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sections here. That are in question. So,
That list of jurisdictional projects, those aren't all. In fact, I wouldn't say any of them were in question when I developed that table. Those are all roads that are candidates to transfer from the county because maybe they don't make sense with the network. Maybe they're not connected to other county roads, or maybe it seemed like it should be maintained by another entity. So those were all just kind of candidates. I keep using that term.
one of them is one of our oiled roads. 1 mile goes up to Dalesburg Baptist, says. Is not connected to the county network. Begin conversation with Garfield Township.
What map is that on, Ron?
I'm just that one that has all the numbers, the bigger one. First page from the. Like where the bike paths were,
Does it say enhancement projects or?
see this one there, Clay County Master Transportation. And then you see the numbers. They're on the pages. On this page. Like you pointed out, that little stretch there on 469. There's a couple of these here that are definitely. Questionable.
If those are just ideas, a lot of those roads are kind of a turnaround route, if you will, for the county. Think of a snowplow going up 1 mile and then coming right back down instead of it being a continuous loop of roads. We identified those just because they're not kind of a grid patterned connected. If it's well understood that, hey, that's a county road, we got no problem maintaining it, I can take them off the table. We don't have to have it in there. If you don't agree with any of the projects on the list, we can take them off.
It's still an enhancement project. Is that correct?
Yeah, proposed enhancement projects. He's got this big map with.
Oh, he's over here doing this. Okay.
I'm holding it up.
Okay.
Don't do as I say, do it or what. But if you look on, the pages in the back. Like there's 1 mile of a county road, gravel. The Dalesburg. Church mile off of the Ballin Road, which. Granted, it's a turnaround, but it turns into gravel after that. Yeah, so.
I'm okay. We can give it back to you, right?
Say something. I think just from my observations here, I believe you guys need to get your facts a little more straight on what actual structures are out there. There's a lot of them missing. I know we've got more bridges in our township than you show for our map on the DOT. The whole county.
So this is separate from that.
I understand, but there's things we're talking about here that. Plans definitely need to be updated. I think it needs to be correct.
Well, there's a
Big
one,
time correct. There's a communication problem from what Rod has and what we present to Rod to what gets on paper.
See, this is just on the county transportation,
Yeah, but how come
roads.
township bridges are on it too?
Well, we're kind of wondering, well, those are bridges that are of the length that we're responsible for. As I understand it. Am I right in that?
I believe so. I think it's
Yeah, I don't,
bridges that are over 20 feet
Yeah,
in length that are on the township network are county responsibility.
yeah, I don't know if you've seen this before today
I got an email on it.
of our trans,
Yeah.
are you sure not the county, not the township? One that you guys applied for a grant? Cause this is totally separate from that.
Well, I just went off the structures that I saw that you presented.
Yeah, those are all county.
You wanna see it?
maintained Bridges.
There's a lot of them on here that are not county. They're on township roads.
And some of
Yeah,
them,
if they're on a
doesn't matter.
township road, but not of a county responsibility, we would.
Not of the county responsibility.
Right. It wouldn't be
Okay.
on here.
You're saying something different than Paul is.
Okay.
Paul's saying, yes, those are the county responsibility because they're over 20 feet.
Yeah.
You know?
Even though they're in the township.
Yeah, they're also not over 20 feet either, some of these.
Okay.
I guess I haven't seen that.
Well, he presented it here.
Well, we'll get to that one. That's who's next.
Yes,
Let's finish this one.
yes.
But I agree with what you're saying. I'm getting the,
You know,
getting the information updated somehow.
there's a lot of that stuff.
And that's why each township needs to have a plan.
We're talking about some.
Exactly.
plan. We'll get to
Exactly.
the counties or the
I'm
township.
just justifying waiting till the next,
Well, they're
item.
next. I mean, they're right after we get done with
Right.
this master plan. So,
right.
any other questions for Paul? Or Rod? Or any questions for us? Hearing none. Thank you.
thank you guys. It's been a pleasure being here. No, I'm serious. It's good to talk to everybody. I talked to Rod, talked to Richard, talked to Betty. Not so much the rest of the commission, so I'm glad to hear everybody's input.
Who, who knew
looking forward
there'd be
to-
so many weeds out in a county road, you know, wandering through the weeds here.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Okay, Rod, the rural infrastructure. grant.
Yeah, I guess. Just for what I had for an update, we talked about whether. It got extended, the deadline for their 5-year plans got extended, which it didn't, and. Garfield, Star and Bethel will be on the next commissioner meeting on the 16th. Or no, the 13th to, you know, if you got any questions about these, I'm gonna give them to Carrie. Hopefully she can have somebody copy them all. So you guys all you can look at them, whatever. I got a hold of Chris from townships and man, I got so many papers now, I don't see it. But the deadlines were not extended for the 5-year plan. That's done for this next year. But they need to be awarded by, any money needs to be awarded for next year by the 15th of January. So that's why I got it on the agenda coming up. That way you'll have a couple meetings if you need them. So representatives from all 3 of the townships that presented their plans will be here at the next meeting. And if you have any questions, we can go through them for them. I'm pretty much told you what they were the last meeting, so. But I did reach out to Chris and she said, no, the deadline has not been extended, but so that's just for 2023 money. That doesn't mean or townships are never gonna get any funding. They just have to do it for the next year then,
When's that deadline, you know?
October 1st.
So they have plenty of time.
Right, last time it got kind of tight, I think. But like Carrie said, or told me, there was 11 out of the 12 counties that opted out. And that's one of the criteria to get in in the line for the money, so.
So I know we've got written requests from 2 townships.
3,
Oh, you have.
Yep.
Okay,
yep, I had it last,
okay.
I have them all. Theirs is for that bridge over the Baptist Creek.
Right.
North, 308 Street. So, yep, they're all defined in here. So some of them are two-sided and our copier doesn't do two-sided, so. And there's a lot, I didn't want to try to scan it. I think it'd be just easier if you guys could do it, so they get them in their packet. You have time to look at them a week ahead of time or however long, but that was what I had for an update. Did you guys have something else you wanted to? On the
On the 308.
on the rural infrastructure thing anyway.
Other than, that goes back to my comment about the amount of structures we have. The more structures we have, the higher we rank, the more money we get. The structures aren't accurate. Not even close. How do we have more bridges in our township than the whole county records for townships?
Well, for one thing, can't use a bridge half-say structure. Sorry, but
I
that
know.
gets everybody confused. And no, I don't know, because the same company here is the same company that went out and counted all these bridges. So I had nothing to do with how many are on these. I tried to stay out of this as much as I could, but that doesn't work. So that map you showed me there, I've seen it somewheres. I don't have it on me. But I went through on the county side of it, and they're right on the ball for what the county is responsible for. So I don't know. I haven't looked at each township. You're the first one that, I mean, you told me that a while back and I thought, didn't Brad recontact you to come and look or no?
No,
Okay. So I will,
I submitted the updated map
okay,
with all the small structures, bridge structures we have. And the map that the Townsend Township Association sends for the state DOT mount for Clay County was like 9. We have like 16 or 14 or whatever we have just in our township. So how did the whole county rank as only having 9? That's small structures now. I'm not talking culverts. These are cement bridges, anything over 15 square feet.
anything over 16 square
Or
feet
16, 6
is
square feet.
our,
Wood structures,
is,
cement ones, all. of them. What have we got, Wayne? 15, 16, something like that, just in our township. And they're not on the map.
And you've already marked up the map, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I'll
you give it to me or you give it to Brad?
You,
That's quite a while back.
I think we were supposed to have them done last spring. Yeah, before the inspection, which another thing, we get supposed to have them inspected, we never get a report.
I don't think we're not doing any inspections on any of your structures.
Thought that was last April.
If they're,
The only one we did an inspection on is that bridge over the Baptist Creek to show you.
Oh, yeah, the one that's bad, yeah, but I'm talking, I thought there was an engineering firm that went around and checked every,
They just counted.
They just counted structures.
well, they missed it. They can't do it all from
and
satellite.
who was that?
All time.
I'll take.
Okay. But Johnson and.
They do the
They're-
counts,
And they're no more. They,
right? Johnson Engineering did our bridge inspection
Yeah.
for the county.
And they no longer do
No.
that or?
no,
Yeah, this was their last year.
they disbanded, whatever,
They're going
They're no
out of that
longer-
business.
in,
Have you
business.
replaced that company?
We haven't yet. We're.
yeah, we
that'll be
picked
next
that
year,
in
next
January.
In January.
Oh. So do we need to amend mean, I guess it's a question for you, Rod. Do we need to investigate and possibly amend our count?
Yeah, I'll check with Brad and see what happened there and figure it out, see what's going on.
Because I think that affects our funding, huh?
Yeah, the total amount that the county has together, all the townships together, that's how they supposedly divvied out the money. But the way it sounded, it kind of went back to the STIP funds, what we've been getting over the years, so I don't know. I have to do some checking on that, see what.
According to the paperwork I saw, we had $11 million in state available for township repair bridges. We ranked like 42nd or 44th or something like that in the 40s because we only have so many listed at the South Dakota DOT. Out of $11 million, we get what, 140 some, right?
136,
Something.
basically.
On being, our ranking is that low. And that's why I've always thought, well, if our records were right, you know, maybe we might be able to move up the ladder a little bit here and get a little more funding for some of our projects.
Well, if your guys is wrong, chances are other townships are wrong.
Everyone's gotta be wrong.
If they went to the work of putting the information in. We didn't have every township that actually did the work either.
No township did their work. Alltech did all of it.
Yeah,
That's true.
just
They didn't
to
review it.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So. See
I
if you
mean,
can find
like-
Craig's map.
Yeah.
If not, you may have to reproduce it. And get a hold of Brad and see what's what.
Brad is with Alltech?
Yes.
He's the head guy, yeah.
Yeah, we need the correct numbers. Cause that could, like you said, that move us up there $11 million instead of getting 130 some thousand, you might get twice that, whatever.
I would think we'd rank a little higher.
Yeah,
Not in a big scheme.
no,
Unfortunately.
no.
We just need to get it figured out because we can always add to the match. I mean, this isn't a final. forever.
Yeah. Is it the townships? Are they the only ones that really know the total bridge count then for their township?
No, Alltech should.
Yeah, we thought Alltech had it. done.
And what type they are though? You gotta go on the ground to find out what they are.
From what I
And they were supposed to go around physically. and
Okay.
Do all that.
Okay,
We actually paid for it.
And we paid for that.
So
Yeah.
we should get some kind of a guarantee that it's correct.
Well, if the job's not done.
Right.
They're gonna finish it.
Right. Sorry, Paul.
Today's report just reinforced the fact that it's not complete.
Right.
Their job is still.
The only thing is, we're talking about two different things
Yeah.
again.
Right.
But yep, I will check with Brad as soon as I get back to the office.
Because once we do get a map that's everybody loves and can accept. Then the townships contact Carrie, right, to keep it updated. I thought,
Oh, yeah.
because anytime the townships do any work on these, they have to update it. Say
Right.
what was replaced, so we have can continue with the map. Now, I don't know if that was supposed to be reported to you. My understanding was it's reported to the auditors, but we can designate who should have it. And I don't want to. Is Drew in here? He's not, is he? So we can.
I'm online.
I mean, Drew's got the ARC, that new software that Alltag uses also, so it should overlap. Is that correct, Drew?
I
With that-
can set it up to do that, yes.
Because Brad was going to help you do that. Also, because that map is supposed to just. It's the same software that we just got for the county
Yep.
on GIS.
I guess I hadn't heard that, so.
So maybe Drew is maybe the planning and zoning person is the person to report. The updates to. So it can be changed in there.
It's a process we can develop.
Okay.
Well, by next meeting. I'll have something one way or the other. I will
Anything else on this topic? Wayne, Craig, do you have anything else you want to add?
And at this point,
Not at this point, no.
Okay. Propane quotes. Looks like Butch's was the low on both.
Yeah, Butch moved to approve Butch's at 179 on both bids.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Anything else, Rob?
Look on the floor behind you. Just in case you lean in the wrong direction. Not that it would be entertaining, but
You wouldn't want to miss it.
no, no, that's all I had. Thank you.
Could be construed as transportation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Andy. Oh, got jail meal bid specs. Everybody see that email that Carrie sent out?
I was gonna suggest if you're interested, I'm on for a few different topics. If you want to move Judge Byrne up.
Well,
Her along,
That's fine
I'd
too.
be willing to do that too, rather than.
Yeah, she's been very patient for an extra 50 minutes.
Oh, thank you. You're so gracious.
You can stand yourself, whichever one. you
Okay,
like.
I'll just stand. Good morning, folks. My name is Tammy Byrne. I'm the circuit court judge that sits here in Clay County. And I'm the reluctant chair of the Clay County Courthouse Security Improvement Committee because it had to be a UJS employee and it ended up being me. So I'm here today to request that the commission approve the submission of this grant to the state for the funds from their state security grant. There's two separate projects that we're proposing. The first one is the one of the greatest importance and need, in my opinion, and that is. I feel like this is the most relevant page of the application that Carrie sent out to you, which is the one with the cost estimates. They're broke down into two. One is the jury room and small courtroom security improvements. And really that also references a secured access for the judges and staff, but the judges are the ones obviously that are the greater security risk to access the small courtroom and the clerk of court's office from the judicial chambers. It also facilitates that as well. It would also expand the jury room. Unfortunately, we would be losing then the public defender's office, but that is a necessary improvement that needs to be made if we're going to continue to have jury trials of any length at all in Clay County. That's going to have to be done. The restroom is not accessible, handicap accessible. That needs to be changed as well. So that is the first one. If approved by the commission, the presiding judge of the circuit would need to approve it before it's submitted to the state. The security grant committee would then meet, and they do, Sheriff Howe advised me, they do have a Zoom participant, which they suggest maybe you. When they consider the grant for additional questions and consideration. But if they approve it, they will pay 75% of the costs and the county pays 25%. So particularly in regard to one that's a need rather than a want. The second, I think it can maybe be argued to be either that would be modifications to the main courtroom. Right now, there are two issues. One is that the inmates don't have a separate area to sit when they're in the courtroom. They sit with the general public right now, which is obviously a security risk. The proposal is to move the jury box to the other side of the courtroom, which is where it is in all the courtrooms I can think of, is that they're on that other side closer to the door. The sheriff can then put the inmates in that jury box, which would be removed from the general public. And then a secondary consideration is it would remove where we are presently is that when the jurors come in, they come in the spar door across the courtroom in front of the defendant in criminal cases and in civil cases as well. But it's a greater concern in criminal cases to access the jury box. The jury box is not handicap accessible. It's not near any type of exit door. And in a more recent criminal trial we had when the verdict was returned, there was a disruption in the courtroom. The jurors were very scared. And that would maybe alleviate some of that. But would also facilitate the sheriff's concern of having the inmates be in that secured area, and it would also help us with the accessibility of that. So that's the second project, would be the main courtroom, and the first is that secure access for the staff, the enlargement of the jury room, and yeah, the small courtroom security. So if anyone has any questions.
Sounds to me like it's something that needs to be done,
Mhm.
period. It looks
The
like.
the
it's gonna
first
come-
one has to be, in my
Right.
opinion, and I don't know if Alexis or the sheriff have any opinion they'd like to offer. I feel like the first one has to be done.
That's the one that totals to 96,761.04.
Correct. And I don't know. if you folks want to have any.
You explained it very well. So, I would agree. The first part is a greater need. The second part solves several problems, but it also really gets in there, basically guts the courtroom and redesigns it, moving the bench around and moving the jury box. So it's pretty invasive. But it does solve several problems that we have.
So I figured it out, it was about $66,000 that the county would have to come up with. Somewhere around that, if you did both projects. I guess my question is how are we on finances? to
And
do
we,
both projects?
we can submit just one instead of both. And Scott Sheldon, who is the security coordinator, had kind of inferred to me that you can submit both. And then if you don't get both approved, you can submit another one next year.
Yeah.
So there's kind of an inference that we might not, or probably wouldn't get both approved, but
They might award one, but not the other.
correct. Okay. And we can obviously just submit one instead of both as well.
So are these bids, have you had? Was this just an estimate from one contractor?
No, Scott Hansen, bless his heart,
Their budgetary numbers only.
but he did get the individual estimates. But
But some of those estimates leave out some of the things. They even say that right in their estimate. I think Ryan O'Connor, it's one of his. He said, he tells you the estimate, what he had, but he also leaves out things that he said, I don't know for sure what this is gonna cost. Because some of it's gonna be, more historical.
Did you fill in those gaps then, Scott?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I mean, I guess that's what I see.
I'll try to answer the questions best I can. There's just a lot of variables when you start looking into this because, its construction came on and they gave us numbers for both those projects. And he said, the courthouse, or we are gonna be responsible for the painting, for the electrical, for flooring, for historical restoration of wood. I think there might have been a fourth one on there. And so then I started out and getting numbers from people. That's why I contacted Ryan's Construction about the historical restoration, because I know it's one of his areas. And then he came up with a whole another line of questions, thoughts and ideas and questions. We got to looking at that wall where the bench sits. Well, that's wallpapered. So now we got to peel wallpaper off. Well, now we got to test for lead. If there's lead, then you got to do a containment and you got to do an encasement and blah, so there's just a lot of variables. And I think what Ryan was trying to point out, we may not have got them all covered. We sure tried like our best, but it's just one of those things, especially when you start moving electrical around in that old courtroom too, So we're trying to get them all covered, but there might be some incidentals there and stuff we're missing that we might want to, if we go forward with this project and we got to let it out for bids and stuff, we're going to want to get an RFB request for bid, pretty tight, airtight request for bid going out, and we might want to have some money set aside, kind of like we are in this MEP project. So, we run across stuff we didn't expect. We have a contingency fund there, so. But I think we got almost everything covered.
So you did fill those gaps in. that
Yeah.
were Specifically omitted in each contractor.
Right. From Pitt's original right,
You had some painting and stuff of your own to fill in a few of those, as I recall.
right. And I got prices on all that stuff.
Right.
But no matter what we do, well, I shouldn't say no matter what we do. It's gonna be kind of difficult to make that bathroom ADA accessible, according to the ADA. Federal government's stamp on it. It's just without really blowing out some walls and doing something. I mean, we're gonna go from a 48 by 40 to 48 by 90 bathroom, 48 inches by 90-inch bathroom, and we're at 48 and 40 now. So we're gonna increase it some, but not enough where they have that turnaround capability in there.
Right. And that's in the need not want category.
Missing that jurors room, yeah.
Correct.
I mean, it's gonna be a lot better than it is now. And we won't have the raised floor in there, so, but we won't be able to put that stamp on there that it's ADA.
How's that affect the grant?
Scott, I have sent it to Scott Sheldon, and really the expansion of the jury room, I don't know how really that maybe meets a security issue, the expansion of it. Secure hallway does, but the expansion of it and the restroom. I mean, if we get state funding for that, I think that's a gift.
Yeah,
Gladly
Okay.
accept. He said it falls within their parameters as being contained in the whole project. So I think that would be a big boon for the county to get assistance with that.
And Carrie, you had talked about at some point about applying for another $100,000 from of COVID funds. And do we know how likely that is to come through?
I think it's one of those like the ARPA funds where if you apply for it, you get it.
All right. So it may make some sense to get this just done.
Would those funds help us do a project like this? By
Yeah.
diversion or otherwise?
By diversion, yes.
And that's standard operating procedure for counties across the nation.
And I would just chime in that I appreciate this and consideration of this, because I do think this is a need, whether it, I'm going to use the restroom in the jury room as an example of this, and just the jury room itself. I mean, I would really encourage, if anybody has not been up there, to go upstairs and be in that room. It is not adequate. That is not dignified to request our residents of Clay County, require them to serve their civic duty and be confined with other people for hours, sometimes days on end in that room. And Judge has fortunately facilitated some work around with that, but it's come at a cost to doing business in many respects. And I think that it's something of that restroom. I don't consider myself a large person, and it's difficult to go in there and use that facility. And I think that then that doesn't even get to the point of how awkward and uncomfortable it would be to have everyone listen to me use the commode in that regard. I don't think that that's appropriate for us to ask our residents to serve in that capacity. And so, not to mention the fact that I have the physical ability to climb up a step and other residents don't. So those things need to be updated. And how we fund that, the taxpayers have spoken that they were not willing to move our facility offsite. And so I think we have to look at these types of things as ways to move forward and update our facilities. And then certainly from a security standpoint, thank goodness for the potential for this grant and for Judge doing the work on this, because that will help us in funding this. But so I am very supportive. I would be supportive of the entire situation, because I think the safety issues in the courtroom are concerning as well. Not only is it, the inmates all sit there by the door, so anybody who comes in has to walk right past them and walk around to get to seating.
Yeah, and this is an old problem. I mean, I know, it's been discussed for years. And, you know, we have this golden opportunity because of federal funding to do it without overtaxing taxpayers. And so unless anybody has anything else, I would move approval of both grant requests.
I believe I'd second that if you're.
You seconded it? Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
My one was its lack of memory is the. What? I get up here luckily a lot enough. Back when there was comment that ADA also was a problem. Person is up speaking. Has that been corrected?
We modified the witness stand, so that is flush with the floor. So, you know, that's not a concern. And I think that was probably the issue that you were referencing.
And that witness stand will be moved in this project.
It will be, and it will stay flush with the floor. And my understanding is the box, the lower level of the jury box will be at floor level. Is my understanding. So that would be compliant for those jurors. And what we do right now is if we have someone that can't, and it's tricky to get up on that box right now, there's not only a step, but there's also a rail at the bottom of it. And every trial I've done, someone's tripped. But what we've done now is had them just sit on the floor by the other jurors, which is, you know, makes them stand out, but I don't know what else to do with it, but it would also resolve that problem.
No, these contractors are not guaranteeing that the work's gonna make the move. Okay.
Right, there's two variables there.
The woodworking that's in there with the judge's bench and all that, if something were to happen to it, they're not guaranteeing it, so that's an added expense, that's not in here.
Right. Yeah, there's really two variables, as I recall, at least in our discussions in the committee. Also, there'd be a possibility of moving us up if we committed to putting more money towards the project. Is it like, say, if we were to commit, say, 50% of the cost, that it would bump us up? Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't recall that. I do know that in regard to the restoration of the woodwork, that is a line item in number 2. Historical restoration of woodwork was a $46,950 was included in that. Because I think the presumption is it's gonna crack.
Yeah, if it should explode, as they put it. It'd be somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000 replicated.
So if we didn't do that, we would end up substituting oak faced plywood, or what would happen if the $46,000, $46,950, if we didn't have that in the budget?
If you didn't have it in the budget to replicate any of that
Yeah.
work.
Right.
Guess I'm not following your line.
Well, what I'm saying is that it sounds like there's some question whether the woodwork during process, maybe it would need to be restored. Maybe it would survive the move, maybe it
Right.
wouldn't. And if it didn't, how would we fix that restoration? Would that be going to find similar wood somewhere else, or like say use oak faced or matching faced plywood to fill that gap? Or how's this gonna work?
The term I heard over and over was quarter sawn oak. I'm not sure what that means in their world, but you know, it's not gonna be just plywood up there. It'd be quarter sawn oak. It'd be, you know, matched what's there to the best of their abilities, and I got confidence in these guys, but yeah, you know, and then there's all the woodwork isn't just there behind the bench. There's panels involved on the east and west walls where the jury's box is going to, and this and that. So, you know, there's some restoration to do there, and the rail that divides the juror's box from where the general public sits, that has to be moved. So there's alterations there. So it's not all contained right behind that bench. But it's in there, but that's between right around $15,000. They is their estimate if that whole thing should just go south.
Yeah, and there are local contractors who, or at least one that I know of, who do historic restorations and actually mill work.
Mhm.
You know, based on what's there originally. So
Yeah.
as long as we document what's there, I think we can.
And the two guys I had up
Reproduce
there
it.
looking at it. They could stand and look at, oh, that's been replaced, that's been replaced.
Yeah.
And the general public wouldn't pick up on it, but they were able to just because that's what they do. So they're very knowledgeable. But like I said, we got to do an RFB on it, request for bid, we're gonna have to make sure that our RFB is good and airtight, if you will, because, we just don't want somebody up there with a claw hammer and a bucket of nails, it's gonna take a little bit more than that. So we're gonna have to make sure that gets written in there somehow.
I think that we should, I agree. I think we should go with everything in section 3 and see what happens.
So I have a question for you. During construction, how is court done?
That's a really good question. I think we'll definitely, if possible, doing it in phases would probably be preferable. Judge Knopf, so you have 3 judges that sit in Clay County, the magistrate judge who uses a electronic recording device to record her proceedings, Judge Knopf, who has a court reporter, and then myself, who I have a court recorder as well right now. So I have to have an electronic recording. So Judge Knopf could maybe do court down here because he has a court reporter to record the proceedings. Judge Sorensen and I cannot because we don't have a court reporter that types. We have to have the listening device that's in the courtroom. So I think we'd have to do them one at a time. I don't know.
What was
Yeah,
even
other
ideas?
ideas.
It's gonna be more than one day.
Yeah, it's
is.
gonna be a lengthy project in
Yes.
there.
So we'll have to be very cognizant of how we schedule that. Judge Sorensen and I will not be able to have court on the same days because we'll have to be using the small courtroom. And sometimes on Friday, all 3 of us had court in Clay County in 2 courtrooms. So we'll just have to be cognizant of doing it in a different way.
And then my other question is, who's gonna be the point person on this project?
He smiles.
With the HVAC in the jail? I'm
Yeah.
gonna start getting confused.
Well, I could continue on from the planning stage, I guess. So give me a call.
So did you vote or was there just
Not
a
yet.
motion?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be, that was
So
part of
Scott,
this.
you have any questions on this? All done.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Andy, you must be with
Jail meals.
It looks like it's similar to what you've done. in the
Yeah,
past.
it's the only thing we changed was the dates. What's been working for us has been working just fine. Pizza Ranch has the current bid. I expect and hope that they'll bid again. There's an opportunity for another bidder. I don't know if they'll bid or not. That's Summit Foods that they specialize in jail, providing jail meals. And it looks like they're going to be providing Union County. They just have to decide if it's in their interest to drive up here for the few meals at a time that we have. I think just looking toward their long term, they might be doing it just for that purpose. But so I hope to get competitive bids. We'll make sure that they go to Hy-Vee as well, who's bid in the past. But other than that, the only thing that I changed on was the dates. And I had because we're running into a holiday that last week of the month, I had the submission deadline be 8:30 a.m. the day that you open them rather than 5 p.m. the day before. And I think we got a little tied up with cars earlier in November, or we'd have done this in November. So we're really down to the wire. Though if somebody new gets the bid, they're going to have to be ready to go in a week. But it'll be all right. Either way.
So what day is the bid opening?
Tuesday, the 27th, I believe.
Okay.
And that would be advertising next week and the following week.
I just need a motion to set that date.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion passes. The JDC contract with Minnehaha County.
So the other night, maybe Carrie could answer this, but there was some discussion of the daily rate for 2023 being $278, and I don't recall us signing that unless I've just forgotten it. They said that they sent that out to us in mid-November. But I don't recall us signing off on that, but in the letter they just sent it, they suggest they even say the word today's daily rate for partners is $278.
Are you
Today's rate.
discussing their flat fee proposal?
In the letter regarding the flat fee proposal,
Okay.
they mentioned the 278, which is the rate for 2023. I don't recall us signing that agreement.
The contract that they sent out is what they're discussing now.
I just haven't seen that then.
I
And
thought I
then
sent
our
that
current
to you
daily
and
rate is
Lexi a while ago. Maybe
$257.
Yeah, I was just noticing it in the commissioner packet today, and so I am assuming there isn't other updates. But maybe I missed that.
I don't know what you folks are looking at. I have a copy of the letter regarding the flat fee. So if we have two issues to discuss, then the flat fee proposal as well as the 2023 daily rate, do you have that contract to sign?
Yes, I mean, I think that's what I see in the packet today.
The 2023 rate of $278. If you want to take the issues one at a time, then I'd recommend that you sign the 2023 contract. Because that's prior to any of this other taking effect.
Yeah, I'll move approval of the 2023 contract.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion passes.
So then the next issue that they had sent out the letter dated November 30th regarding the joint powers agreement where we would pay a share of the debt service based on population and usage of the facility. And we've recently updated that joint powers agreement in the summer of 2022. They are suggesting the discussion of a flat fee for daily usage rather than a debt service obligation. I spoke to the director at JDC yesterday about that, just making sure that I'm understanding correctly that they're not expecting a debt service obligation in addition to a higher flat fee. And he said, no, that's what they're thinking of. He said that for example, they have a county that they would be on the hook for a $20,000 a year debt service obligation, even though they have no usage typically. And he thought that might seem less fair to them than the flat fee. And I get that. But there's a lot more that goes into it. I think that at this point, they're just asking you to sign a statement that we, the Clay County Commissioner, supported the idea of moving to a flat fee for bed usage, but they haven't made a decision that that's what they're going to ask of us yet. And they're just in this discussion and they want to see where we stand, whether or not we want to pursue a flat fee or if we're going to go with a share of the debt obligation over the life of the bond. And they're having a $50 million bond for their project. And reading the letter, they mentioned that the anticipated annual bond payment for that would be $4.5 million. And our share of that would be based on the formula in our current joint powers agreement would be about $76,000 a year. And on top of that would be a daily rate, even when we're a compact county and paid a share of the debt service on the previous agreement, which was from 1995. We still pay the daily rate. We just get a favorable rate. Right now, that rate is $278. It'll go up annually. It's gone up every year. So we would pay the debt service obligation as well as a daily rate. The hope would just be it's considerably less than $400, but you should expect to see that be in the neighborhood of $300. What I don't know regarding the daily rate is whether or not that would include a rise for our shelter care options. We pay both of them out of the same budget line. And but about half of the bed days we use are Arise and half are JDC. They, in the letter, I don't know if you folks are looking at it for dated November 30th. I'm not sure on that. I believe them, but I'm not sure where they get their numbers for the last 5 years, because I'm not seeing the same numbers. But then again, they're probably only talking about the JDC, the secure beds, because that's what they're funding is the new JDC, not the shelter care option that right now is Arise. But right now we pay the same rate for Arise as we do for JDC. We certainly don't want to be paying $400 to $450 a day for a kid in shelter care where they don't have a bond payment. So I understand what they're saying when they're requesting a higher daily rate if we're not chipping in on the debt obligation, but that's not going to be the case for Arise. So I think we have a lot of questions to ask and get answers to. They suggested there'll be meetings before this decision's made. I don't know if you're in a position where you want to sign off on a desire to go to a flat fee without more information.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're willing to discuss or listen to other or more options or what further discussion. It doesn't sound like.
I would need to crunch numbers more to really give you a firm answer on what we paid for secure housing in these last 5 years, as opposed to the shelter. For example, in their letter, they have us down for 69 bed days in 2021. That's not at all accurate. In 2021, we had 266 bed days, which 159 of those were JDC and 107 were at Arise. So I don't know where they're coming with 69, but they have us down for a 5-year average of 118 bed days, which might be about right for secure bed days in JDC. But that's the kind of number we're looking at. But looking at the last 5 years, in their letter, they mentioned the bed day usage, which varied from 46 to 202. That might be about right, but we're seeing our annual payment these last 5 years from between 16,000 and 65,000, and it varied. And a lot of those cases, I'm sure State's Attorney could tell you about, in almost all of those cases where the number's very high, it's one kid, 1 or 2 kids that go in and stay there. That it's not because we have this increased usage where a lot of kids are getting in trouble. It's one kid that doesn't seem to have any other options, and they can't seem to get them moving through the system, and that kid will sit there for 3 months. And those are the years that we're paying $40,000 and $50,000 and $60,000 a year.
Yeah, and in this case, I don't think the average is probably the good number to use, because what I see is an uptrend, particularly when you talk about 2021.
Yeah.
You know, 40, I mean, the trend is not toward the mean. So yeah.
And
In those years, it was one kid.
And-
Yeah, I remember you telling us about that at that time, that there was one kid or 2 kids that were causing a spike over a long period of time.
And I do have concerns about that. And I utilize these numbers to hopefully begin a dialogue with court services and our juvenile judge, because juvenile cases should take priority in the justice system. And we need to be moving those cases forward. Our office has expressed those concerns in the past and pushed where we can on that. But I think that this is a good opportunity to continue to have that dialogue. You heard the conversation about the abuse and neglect cases this morning in regard to the conflict contract. And I would tell you that these numbers, obviously, you know, we don't put abused or neglected children in juvenile detention center custody, but we can do better than this. Our justice system should be doing better than this for our kids. And obviously then it affects the bottom line as well. When we're paying those daily costs, it's not good for the kid. It's not good for society. And we'll continue to try to push those cases through faster to get the kids the resources they need, because sitting in juvenile jail is not getting them that.
I just real quick, I did a little math here. And if I look at our numbers for 2021, these are my numbers, not the numbers they have here where it's 69. we had 159 kids that we paid to sit, 159 bed days in JDC. There were 107 in shelter, and those separate those out because I'm confident that's going to be a different amount. If we paid $400 a day for those kids that were in JDC, our cost would have been $63,000 plus the shelter, which we're going to have either way. And they suggest that we'll be paying 76,000 based on the formula in the joint powers agreement. So there's a bit more of a gamble on the on going for the flat fee, but not, I don't think it's terribly risky, because if we had the debt service plan according to the joint powers agreement, we're still going to pay a daily rate for every kid, whether they're in secure or non-secure. And so I think that we would be definitely requiring ourselves to, pay considerably more for sure, but we also would hopefully guarantee beds and hopefully see a lesser rate per day, but there will be a daily rate on top of the debt service.
Which I would like to know the answer to on the guaranteed beds, because I talked to that same person,
Mhm.
Tyler. And he
Yeah,
said, we're not guaranteed beds now, which.
yeah.
is not my understanding.
I talked to the JDC director, and he said, yeah, we want to keep our partnership. We want to keep our counties together. They want to sign a new joint powers agreement, even if we're not on the hook for the debt service, because they want to keep our partner counties together. And so I think we'll want to make sure we get some assurance about guaranteed beds.
Did they say how long the bond was gonna be for? Was that a 20?
He didn't tell me. I'm just looking in the letters, see if it's suggested, but I don't see that in there, but it's a $50 million bond that they're expecting. I'd have to do some math and see about where the annual payment is $4.5 million. I couldn't tell you based on that, whether or not they're talking 20 or 30 years.
There must be some reason for this soft guarantee discrepancy. It might be that we're guaranteed that our kids go in before any kids that are outside of the compact. That may very well be why you're getting different numbers. If there are, say, 300 within the guarantee, and we send somebody up that's 301 or 302, they may have to turn us away because there's no beds available within the compact. So I think that's a way we should ask about that to clarify that.
Well, and Andy and I did figure out, we talked to the same person.
Yeah.
We just got two different answers.
No, we didn't talk. You talked to Tyler Platt. I talked to, I talked
Did
to,
talk to Tyler.
no.
Okay, sorry.
and we have not been turned away because of lack of space. We've never been turned away because of lack of beds. We do get turned away because they don't meet criteria.
Mhm.
And there's a genuine effort to keep kids out of JDC. That's the goal. And so if there's other alternatives, we're going to be using those. We don't have quite the alternatives here that they have in Sioux Falls, where they would not take a kid into JDC, but they'll let them sit in the lobby till the parents come pick them up. They call them a lobby hold, and they have after school alternatives, and we're seeing growth toward that here in Vermillion. But so, hopefully we can see that, but it's those kids that home is not a suitable option. But they otherwise are not really appropriate to be held in custody. And that's where so many of our kids go to shelter care. That's the situation there.
So all they're really asking for us from today is to say we're open to discuss flat fees.
I think it's fair to say, yeah, that's what they're asking. It's just like the language is, we are supportive of the idea of moving to a flat fee for bed day use should the Minnehaha County Juvenile Justice Center be approved. So that's pretty wide open. It doesn't obligate us to anything. I don't know that it paints us into a corner to stop discussing the other option.
Because there's a lot of questions being answered.
Yeah, but their projected increase is only about 1/3 over what our per day bed is now.
I would expect if we had a per diem and we don't go to this greater fee, it's still going to be around $300 some in
Yeah.
2024 anyway. So we're only looking at $100 increase and not necessarily be a part of the bond. They just I think they want to be able to do some planning if we don't sign on, because I'm confident that there are members in our compact, which we had 14 members from 95 to 2015, and now I think we're at 16 after the new compact was signed. I'm sure there's some of those that are saying, I'm not signing on to that. We'll just pay as we go. and they want to know who is going to be in that.
But even the $425 flat fee that they're proposing is gonna go up every year too.
Oh, sure.
So.
Well, that's my inquiry is what advantage is there to signing this?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they just want to know where we stand,
So
what our preference is.
So that's what I would say is I think by signing on to it, it's an indication of a preference of a flat fee, not just to continue the discussion. Like, I think it's fine to have somebody respond to them and say, hey, we're open to further discussion of all options. We just want some more information, but if, I mean, I would, in looking at this, want to be utilizing this on the other side of this type of negotiation to say, well, Clay County is interested in more of a flat fee. I mean, if we sign on to this, and I don't know that that's, and maybe that is what you all feel, because we don't know about the debt service and all of those things, but
But if we don't sign on to it, we can just send an email that says we're open to discussion and all options.
and then maybe if there's some reason that they would like this from you all, they can come explain to.
And give us more detail. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can say any more than, you know, we're open to discussion and we're of a flat fee without more information. And we can have, we would welcome more information as numbers become available, because it sounds like they don't have numbers yet either.
No, we're gonna, the numbers that they projected to us, this, you know, the 76,333 annual cost toward the bond payment is they had a consultant come in and run these numbers for all of their partner counties. But yeah, I don't think we should really gasp at the idea of $425 per day as comparison to roughly 300 now with no obligation toward the bond payment. It's expensive. It's just always going to be expensive. And we just want to, you know, make sure that it's not going to be necessarily more expensive. I don't think it will be. I think it's going to be a similar cost. And, you know, in Clay County now, we've got a safety center bond, we've got a school bond, and to sign on to this bond in Minnehaha County at the same time. You know, there might be a lot more stomach for just pay as we go, although there would be years it could be more. I really don't, I don't see that though, when you figure that we're gonna have a per diem on top of the debt obligation anyway. That's what we did from 95 to 2014 is we paid, I think it was something like $7,500 a year toward our share. It was a much smaller deal, but $7,500 a year plus we paid a per diem. But Carrie and I have kept that line item in my budget with zeros in there just because we knew this day would come and we might find ourselves with a debt obligation toward JDC.
I think we just need more answers. More information. Before we can make a decision.
Yeah. With what we know right now, you know, I'd lean towards the per day, but definitely should have more information to go on.
And I think that based on my conversation with the director up there is I believe that they feel a presumption that their counties would prefer that. And they just kind of want to see where everybody's at.
So. If I'm understanding right, you just want to send an email, not sign
Yeah.
on to this, send the email
Yeah.
that says we're open to all discussion. Or any discussion. I'll take a motion on that.
So I'll move that we send an email expressing our willingness to continue the discussion and are requesting additional information as it becomes available.
Second that.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion passes. Does anybody else need recess?
I'm okay. Are you done with me? I can't remember everything on the agenda. There's gonna be at some point, a deputy's gonna be coming to get into that room. He mentioned it to me. I told him, I'd tell him if there was a recess, but otherwise he might interfere in your meeting with just a minute.
Do you guys want me to send that email just to clarify? Yeah.
That'd be great.
Wayne, let's get you off the agenda. Right after.
What can make you wait, Drew?
That's how I like to be referred to.
We don't like rush joining, so.
Since Alexis is here, did have a meeting with the state's attorney's office 2 weeks ago, maybe. To discuss the drone pilot situation, and through the discussions, as long as you all are okay with it, we're gonna stick to county employees only. It just seems like it's going to be a lot less insurance hassle and potential liability issues. So, if you all are okay with that, I will try to find some others within the county organization itself, with one sitting in the room currently who happens to have a pilot's license. So.
Not all the way.
Yeah, so, we will end up getting a couple of them and all that. Just wanted you all to be aware of it and what we decided and all that. So
Sounds good.
We don't need any action on that.
I don't think so.
No, I think, part of our discussion was if drone usage kind of picked up and we were running into problems finding people in the county, then we might be able to revisit this issue.
Yeah.
So,
So when you do add somebody as a drone pilot, we need to approve. We need to just.
I'll bring them in. I'll bring it in for you all to approve them and all that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is going to be, we'll have to get some training for them and stuff like that to pass the pilot's test and all that. So
There
Do you
are,
have any kind of list of those that are officially non-county, but in-county residents that are pilots? I don't know if that would be handy just to have on those emergencies.
no, because again, then we're talking the issue about bringing outside agencies on. No,
Or awareness of it.
no, no more than I know who regular airplane pilots are. I just happen to know that Drew has a pilot's license, so.
yeah, there are a couple
And,
licensed drone pilots that work for DANR
Yeah.
up at Eakley Science Center that are licensed pilots that I understand fly for DANR, but again, that doesn't address the problems that we're talking
Right.
about here.
I just know my son is a licensed pilot, but it's for his private business.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's just a ton of people that break the laws. So, but anyway, so that's where we're sitting. And just on a side note, since I don't think I'm on the agenda for the rest of the year. Thanks, Mike and Phyllis. See you in your regular citizenship, but I guess. The first of the year.
You don't have to wave to them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could
Come
say
the
something here, but I'm
first
not
meeting in
going to.
January when you appoint me. Only have to like me at any given time, so.
Thanks, Lane, I appreciate it.
Excellent.
Thanks to you.
And I concur.
Drew.
Morning, it's just a plat for somebody's home place. It had to be a replat because back at some point they platted off just square around the house. And obviously the bank didn't like that, so they're going in for a refi, and would have been a minor plat, but the surveyor put all the signatures on there, so.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes. Do you have one more thing?
I have nothing more, but that's an issue.
You don't?
We have any,
Has there been any changes?
none. I've nothing since the last meeting,
So we don't know that he's removed any cattle.
not that I'm aware, not since I've been out there last Friday. I was gonna go out there today.
I don't know if you all want to discuss that further. Direct me to do anything with that. I mean, I would want Drew to double check before we filed anything, but
Before you go any farther, if you're gonna discuss. it,
Yeah.
Meeting over to Phyllis.
so
So until you check. I don't know if we can really, where are we at now exactly? We've sent him, has he gotten letters?
he was served with notice that he
Okay.
was in violation of Clay County zoning ordinance as it pertains to the AFO, CAFO provisions
Okay.
and needed to apply for a conditional use permit, needed to immediately move his cattle. As of the 22nd of November, that was non-compliant
Okay.
and Drew was able to do a count of cattle and I believe where we're at
Over 1,000,
at that one location.
both locations,
Okay,
so he's a large.
Well, that's where we're at.
So, you know, I don't see any movement on the landowner's part to ameliorate the situation. And it seems really unfair to neighbors and to everybody else who, you know, complies with the law. So I would be in favor of moving toward, you know, an injunction with all due speed. I mean, I just hate having to do it, but I don't know that this, I mean, every time we make any kind of proposal, they just, you know, continue, you know, to add infrastructure, cattle. You know, I don't see any evidence whatsoever that this person is gonna comply. And I don't think it's gonna happen unless we go to court, and I hate doing that. You know, I think, you know, it's the last thing in the world we want to do, but I don't see any other way, you know, to ensure health and safety.
I guess I would agree with you, Betty. I don't see anything happening if we don't do something. And that's kind of what we're here for. I don't like to do it either. I mean, I never like to do that to anybody, but obviously he's not getting the message. Or he's just saying, I'm above it. And I mean, if that's the case, then I think we got to put more pressure on. That would be my assumption.
My understanding is there's actually been more cattle brought in, none taken out.
I don't know if any more cattle have been brought in.
Well, but since notice, he's brought cattle in.
I have no evidence of that.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
That's a.
But he has continued to build
it continues to
infrastructure.
expand. Yes, and add infrastructure.
Yep.
And, last time I was out there, he's stacking up a lot of feed bales. Probably a lot of it's for wind protection, but I think he's also got a silage pile and he's got grinders.
Yeah.
He's prepping
Yeah.
for the
And-
winter.
And there's been no movement toward moving cattle or,
Did you hear back? from the
So when last we left the communication with his attorney, he had advised that the timeline of having them out, I think that the goal via the notice was somewhere roughly around November 20th, that he needed to have the cattle removed. And his attorney had advised that that was not reasonable. He could not do that. He had no location to put the cattle. Talked about when he could get into conditional use permit application in. but provided no timeline, and that was specifically requested. If he can't have it done by then, when can he have them removed? And we have not been given a date or timeline of when that can happen. So, I think provided that we verify that the cattle are still out there and they have not been moved, I do think that that's important for us to know within that timeline. Then if what you're inquiring is 11-234 SDCL 11-234 identifies in the event of a violation or threatened violation of the regulations or restrictions of an ordinance adopted pursuant to this chapter, the Board of County Commissioners or any member thereof, in addition to other remedies, may institute appropriate action or proceedings to seek an injunction in a court of competent jurisdiction to prevent, restrain, correct, or abate such violation, threatened violation, and is the duty of the state's attorney to institute such action. So my inquiry is, that's what you're asking me to do. I think that would be something that would be entertained with a motion, presuming that we verify that this is still in violation and that it hasn't been remedied. If Drew were to check on it and somehow the cattle were all removed from that location, obviously then this is a moot point. But I think that's the authority that we would be seeking, and the request then is that asking the court to order that all cattle be removed. And if not, the county be authorized to remove them and sell them. I mean, what would you all prefer? And unless and until he can get a conditional use permit that there not be cattle on there. I mean, he needs to be in compliance with our county ordinance.
All right, so you want me to try to make a motion? So I think the motion would look like pursuant to SDCL 11-2-34. We request that the state's attorney apply for an injunction to remove cattle from the operation, and if the cattle are not removed in a reasonable period of time, that the county can remove and sell the cattle. Any amendments?
Is there a date needed in there?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're asking my opinion on this, it's immediate. I think where we sit today on December 6th, 2022, after having provided notice on October 20th, 2022, and requesting discussion, and we've not gotten that other than, it's immediate from my standpoint. However, if you all feel, and I'm certainly, if the court feels something different is required, it's just hard to I don't want to say negotiate against ourselves. I don't even know what to give because he hasn't given us a reasonable time frame other than to say, no, I can't do it by then.
Yeah. We've got nothing.
We've got nothing.
I mean, no matter what, how we put it, we have gotten zero back. So, there's been no negotiation whatsoever. So I will change my motion. Replace within reasonable time to immediately. All livestock.
From the new facility.
Yep.
From the new facility.
Yep, from the new
Yeah.
facility, all livestock from the new facility.
Description of where the new facility is, I would think we would.
Yes. So in Drew's notice, it was indicated at 46881 307th Street, Beersford, South Dakota. And then I do have a legal description.
Use legal because that address is just something I used to get something on Google.
Which should be the northeast quarter of section 26, township 94 north, range 51 west of the 5th PM in Clay County.
I'd include that whole quarter section because he owns that whole quarter, right? No? Okay. The other thing too is an injunction just prevents someone from doing something. The injunction wouldn't cover removing the cattle, would it? The injunction would have to say, not retaining cattle on that property. Otherwise, we move it. Is that correct?
Well, I think those could be two reliefs requested. I mean, he certainly shouldn't be proceeding forward in fashion of let's remove them today and put some more back tomorrow.
No.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so enjoining, the first part of the injunction would be enjoining him from retaining cattle on the site. And the second would be to enjoin him from placing any more cattle on the site or animals.
Do we need a court order to remove the cattle then?
oh, I think it would be unwieldy to proceed without one. I mean, I wouldn't want to be responsible, the county to be responsible for somebody else's property without a court order.
Correct.
And yeah, so I would want to make sure we had that.
There was another question over here.
I believe it's a Burbank address instead of a Beersford.
Oh,
I just texted.
Oh, okay.
okay.
You gotta make sure you get the address.
Yeah, let's use the legal because that address, just,
Yes.
you want to get to Google.
Kind of made the address up.
Yeah.
Couple things then. So the state's attorney is applying for an injunction to remove all livestock and prevent replacing the livestock. How do we want to word that?
Well, it's remove all livestock. And if the livestock is not removed immediately to, the county can remove them and sell them. And further, to enjoin the property owner from, placing any more livestock on the property.
Unless and until a conditional use permit is granted.
Right.
Yes,
No, I think,
that covers.
Not property, facility.
yeah,
Facility. Okay, thank you.
and I think.
Do we need anything that states cease all operations of this proposed facility?
Well, we don't, I mean, we
Sort of is saying
I
that.
feel a
but-
little sorry for the cattle here, so I don't want them to stop feeding the cattle.
Oh,
I mean, I think that I understand.
I was more on the improvement.
Yeah.
than
Oh,
on
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, and I feel like the improvements are on him. In other words, if he wants to spend $1 million building a facility, as long as there are no cattle on it, I have no objection.
I don't say that because then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't say that.
and
So we have a
Alexis-
first and a second. Are we clear on, do you need another?
And
review?
Alexis,
One last thing, the legal description. Northeast quarter of the northeast quarter, section 26, township. I didn't get the township in the range.
94 north.
Okay.
Range 51 west
Okay,
of the 5th PM. And we'll verify this before anything gets filed with the court. And if there's any problems, I mean, there's a meeting next week. We will make sure that we get that updated and clarified, but. So we're gonna make sure there's still issues of non-compliance. Presuming there are, go forward with injunctive action.
Well, we haven't had a second yet.
Oh, I
I'll
thought
second
that was
it.
a second. Okay. First and a
and
second.
we'd ask for a court order for removal of the cattle. We can't do that on our own. We don't want to do that on our own.
Right.
volition.
I mean, I think what we're asking for in the simplest of terms, and perhaps should have started is an injunction for this livestock operation to become compliant with county ordinance. I mean, that's the issue here is he's not compliant by operating this. He's not compliant with county ordinance because he hasn't gotten a conditional use permit to do it. And those cattle need to be removed unless and until he gets a conditional use permit.
Exactly.
Yeah, so do you need more from us in terms of getting a court order? Or is that,
I think I'll be able to work with Drew. I'll keep you guys posted on status of things. And I've got a shell of some things outlined because I would agree. I mean, it's unfortunate that it's coming to this standpoint. I would love nothing more, and we'll certainly update you if we find out today the cattle are gone.
Every time I drive by, I hope.
Yeah.
We do have a first and second. Shall we have a vote on?
All in favor?
Yeah, all in favor?
aye,
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Scott.
Probably do an executive session. for this. Hey, Travis.
Update on the MEP project, the HVAC project. I think you got my notes in your packet. So you kind of know where I'm coming from, where I'm going. Things we have been discussing in our meetings. We had 2 meetings. A lot of looking around at the facility, making decisions. So I don't know if there's anything on there anybody has any questions about. I know Ryan's on here this morning also. Gonna talk about a few things, the location of the what I'm calling the main duct run, the vertical run from basement to roof. There'll be some discussion about that. And then I believe he has a question about the fan coil units, another option that they came up with. Anybody have any questions on any of those notes that I sent you? That you would like me to try to answer? So if not, are you on there, Ryan?
Yeah, I sure am.
Okay. So I guess I'll let you take over.
Okay. I had 2 items I just wanted to run by. We thought it was appropriate just to bring it before the group. One of them is the duct routing through the building, like Scott alluded to. The ideal place to run those ducts is right on the north side of the elevator. But there's a challenge there because the jury room, which I heard the discussions earlier in the meeting about, it's already pretty small, and to run the ducts through there, and the way the placement of the door to the room, it would create kind of a really awkward little corner there right as you come into the room. So I was wondering if it would be permissible to actually run the ducts vertically on the north wall. And I don't know if you were given that email that I sent to Scott that had a sketch. You guys have that in front of you? No?
It says proposed duct shaft.
Yeah, are you looking at that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so on the northwest corner of that room, I'm showing a red box and then a couple more boxes with slashes through them. I'm wondering if there's a possibility that we could actually put the ducts vertically through that one room in front of that window in that corner. Because it won't fit right by the elevator there. Obviously, it covers the window. It makes the room a little bit smaller in that corner. But I just wanted to run it past you, and if you say it's out of the question, then we'll keep looking. But this was something that might work pretty well as far as the ductwork routing. Any questions or comments about that?
So that's just gonna close off a window, is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. Yep. You'd still have one window completely open. But the window would, I presume we'd probably put like a black film on the back side of it, and then it would be covered and insulated and all that with this duct shaft. And it would just be on the third floor, like the second floor right below here. Then we'd be back to against the elevator.
Well, 2 floors in is what you're saying the windows would be, or just one?
Just third floor would have the window interrupted.
Right.
Yep.
And-
The-
And that jury room is gonna get expanded.
Yeah, I heard that you guys passed that, so that maybe that alleviates some of the concern about the room getting smaller by this chase.
So that room would expand to the west, to the left on this drawing? Is that what we're talking about, or?
Correct, to be to the west.
Yeah, and then the big box that's clear in the upper left-hand part of this drawing, that must be a chimney, right?
On the outside of the building,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the existing chimney.
and that's gonna remain in use?
It will remain there. We're not planning to run the new boiler stacks in there. Just
see.
because of the difficulty of trying to install them in there.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking at that as I did this clever, but not clever perhaps, in a house of my own. I ran vertical HVAC tubing up through an abandoned chimney.
Oh, sure.
Would that be an option?
Well, was your chimney made out of Sioux quartzite?
No,
That's the challenge. This one, it's made out of that hard granite or quartzite in order to, to get inside there to install something or to come through the wall at each floor would be a challenge.
right.
Yeah,
They are
because
quartzite.
you do have to come through at each level. You come through that shaft to serve each level.
Is there any reason why is that site the most favorable for you guys? Just the ease of being able to run it because there's no crawl space on either end?
Well, it puts it in a nice central location that we can wrap the ducts around, and also on the roof right above that elevator area, there's some load-bearing walls that come in contact with the roof, so we can put our new HVAC unit right on the roof without any structural concerns.
So if you keep it centrally located, and when you're coming off that vertical with your horizontals, you're more centrally located, it's going to be less exposed horizontal ducting. Is that correct? Versus coming up in a vault like we've kind of discussed off and on.
Yeah, it would probably be about the same amount of duct work, but the length of the runs ends up being more balanced with this. The reason for that is because on the south side of the building, there's that grand staircase. And we can't go across that horizontally because it's all open. But on this north side, we can, so we can go west and east.
Gotcha. Okay.
Will there ever be a problem if sometime down the line, the elevator had to be replaced?
That work could be done inside the elevator shaft. I don't think the outside would be a problem. Like I'm just for reference, like right now we're involved with a building where they're replacing their elevator with a faster one, and it's all internal to the shaft. They do the work from the doors on each floor. They don't have to like cut a hole in the shaft. I think we'd be okay from that standpoint.
Cause I assume that if anything happens to that elevator, there'll be a new one added on the outside.
That's what I'm thinking too, but I just wanted to.
Yeah.
No, it's worth thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that is the ideal solution, isn't it?
It is.
Mhm.
That was all.
Yep.
It's only money, right, Ryan?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it sounds to me like that's what we need to do.
Yeah, it'll work.
You know,
Because putting it by the chimney, you're saying is gonna block off the door too much into that room? Or not the chimney, the elevator?
Right, yeah, if you look at that sketch, I redlined in where the actual door location is. This old drawing doesn't show it accurately. So that red line of the door, it's right tight against there. So then there's not room to put it just to the left of that door. Because it'd be like, as soon as you walk in the room, there'd be this duct shaft in your way.
Yeah, just so you got a visual of it. It'd be about 64 inches wide and probably about 12 inches bumped off the wall, probably 64 by 12.
Yeah, or even a little more than 12. Yep.
Yeah, so it's gonna be pretty substantial. If it goes to the north wall, it won't go through Alexis' office either. Cause it's going.
Use some sound barrier there. You wanna add?
And it looks like when you do this project of expanding the jury room and take that wall out, I don't think that this would interrupt that at all. You would just have I guess you'd wind up with 3 windows in the room then, with this one, of course, still being covered. Any other
Scott, you think
thoughts,
you think it's workable?
Yeah, it's not my first choice, but
What's your first choice?
well, my first choice doesn't work either. So
Oh,
was the
Gotcha.
vaults, but because of the grand stairway, it makes that horizontal run's really difficult to make. So I think that's, as much as I hate to say it, I think that's the best option, unfortunately.
So.
Because we looked all over. I've been digging around, looking around in vaults and rooms about where we could hide it, this and that. We thought we had the ideal spot, but then there's no attic over the courtroom. And so, yeah, things became kind of difficult. So
Ryan, does this change anything? If that jury room gets expanded into that other room,
Mhm.
would that change location or? Is there
You know,
something?
I don't think so. I think this would, even with that wall out of there, I think this would still be a good spot unless you only, and let me rephrase that, unless you don't need this door on the east side anymore. Because
No,
but I
need it.
think you do need it because that's the
Yeah.
way, that's the back hallway into the jury room.
Right.
So yeah, even with the larger room, I think we want it on the north wall rather than trying to get it in by the elevator there.
Okay.
if we did put it on the south wall of the jury room, to try to paint a visual picture for you, there'd be an entry into the jury room, but no door. So you'd be walking in, and then like he said, it'd be like an alcove, they just call it, or a short hallway you'd walk in. And you're gonna come up against the walls, 3 feet in the door, and then you'd have to turn to the north. And that's where your door would be into your jury room if they place it on the south wall versus the north
Right.
wall.
Right, yeah, if we kind of stacked those ducts north of the elevator, right, as Scott's saying, it'd be like an alcove. You can't walk straight west into the room anymore. You'd
Right.
walk in to a little alcove and then north to get into the room.
And what we talked about in our meeting is that makes it difficult for a wheelchair to get in there and turn to get into the room then.
Well,
Yeah, wheelchair would probably have to go out to the other door, so then that juror has to go out in public space, which probably isn't ideal or fair.
No, no, my chimney did not have quartzite. I have poured 6-inch holes through a few hundred feet of quartzite, so
Yeah, and I
don't
apologize the
necessarily-
way I phrased my
I don't-
response, Commissioner. I didn't mean to offend you.
No, you don't. You did not offend me, but
Oh,
it
good.
did, let me know what your thoughts are. And,
Okay.
so I on one hand don't see Quartzsite as being impenetrable, but I understand why a lot of folks do, especially housed in Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
Any other questions or? So far, so good then?
Yeah, so
Guess
far so
so.
good. I think, I think that going to covering the window is probably the best option as presented, at least.
And there's still gonna be 2 windows, so I would.
Right.
Yeah.
keep one in there, but-
Once we knock that wall out, the window placement's gonna be symmetrical. So what?
There's only one, right, in the public defender's office, only one window.
Yeah.
I think so.
Is there just one?
Yeah, I believe so.
So
Yeah.
there'll be 2 then in that. big
Okay.
room.
Right.
Remember if there was another one.
There might be one to the left of the chimney on this
Yeah.
drawing.
I'm gonna quick open the drawing here. Just, I was kind of curious about that.
Get to the small courtroom pretty quick though.
I was thinking it was a double window, kind of like in our offices, like they're right next to each other. But I could be wrong on that.
You not paid attention to that when you walked in there? You had other things on your.
Try to.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble locating the drawing. I was thinking there was another window on the other side.
Might be 2 windows,
doesn't matter.
public defenders. I
Yeah,
don't
it doesn't matter
remember.
that much.
Okay. Well, if we're okay with that, we'll proceed with figuring out the details on that location then.
Are you gonna proceed then with the thought that that wall won't be there?
We'll plan for that not being there, right? Yeah. Like like the west wall of this duct shaft will have to be like a freestanding element. So that when that wall gets taken away, that it's not a part of the shaft.
Good point.
Okay.
Okay.
Then the other item I had that I wanted to run by you was we thought of another idea. One of the main goals of the project is to allow in the spring and in the fall, when you're building, some areas need heating, some need cooling, or maybe at night you need heating and during the day you need cooling. There's that switching back and forth in your system right now. It's either one or the other, it can't do both. And originally our solution to this was to add that whole piping system. So we have a 4-pipe fan coil system. So then you'd have heating and cooling available. Another idea we thought of, we want to run by you, was to actually just leave your piping system as is and leave the fan coils as 2-pipe ones that switch over. But then the new fan coils would have relatively small, like 1 kW or 1.5 kW electric heaters built into them. And then in the spring and fall, you'd basically leave your system in cooling, and then rooms that need a little bit of heating in the morning, or maybe the north side of the building, they can just run those electric heaters. The idea would be that you'd only run those heaters just during that shoulder season in the spring and the fall, but like in the middle of the winter, they're all going to need heating. So then you would not use the electric heat, because electric heat it's a little more expensive energy compared to a natural gas fired boiler. But the thought was, for only a couple months out of the year, using those heaters just some of the time, that added utility cost would not outweigh the expense of adding that extra piping system and all the disruption and all that to actually install it. I'm gonna skim through my notes here, see if I missed anything else. Have I painted a picture though of what we're
Yep.
proposing? So you're basically your electric heat is how you would get through those shoulder seasons to provide comfort. Well, just to put a number on it, I looked at, like, there's a little more electrical cost, installation cost, because there'd be some new wiring, but then saving that piping system and all the insulation and the drilling, core drilling holes through the floor and all of that. We figured it would net savings like $150,000. And I might even add, like, in that savings, that this system would be somewhat simpler to design as well. So we're offering a little credit back on our design fee as well. It just simplifies things. So that's in there as well. There was a question.
Yeah, so would it be under the control of each office, whether to turn on the heat or not? In other words,
There's quite a few options there. Everything will be tied to a central automation system, and you can set that up so that, for example, maybe the occupant is allowed to adjust their temperature up 2 degrees or down 2 degrees, but no more than that. Like, they can push the button or turn the knob all they want, but it only goes in that range. You could also set it up so that electric heat is locked out certain months of the year, just so it doesn't inadvertently get used when there's already boiler heat available. You can put it on a time schedule so that, like, an example is the electric heat is only allowed to be used during the occupied hours, so that in those shoulder seasons when there's actually people there and they're a little bit cool, they can turn it on. But at night, when you don't really care if it's 5 degrees cooler or more, then it just locks it out, so that you're not spending that electric utility to heat the space needlessly. So a lot of options.
Or all of the above.
Yeah, maybe you put all those safeguards in.
Well, and Scott will be able to control it too.
Yeah.
It's not set and then
Right,
we can't change it ever.
right.
Yeah. No,
Plus on that day, those working hours, we gotta be cognizant of some people work past 5 o'clock here also.
right.
We don't want to freeze them out of here.
No, that sounds like it'd be reasonable, Ryan, to do that. And I know that with gas-fired boiler and stuff, with 2-pipe system, we'd have those limitations, and we could pay for a lot of electric heat on shoulder seasons with that 150,000 or better.
Right. That's exactly what I thought. I kind of threw some numbers at that, and that it stretches the payback out so far that might not be worth doing. For reference, we've got some dormitories at one of the state schools that has a 2-pipe system with electric heat. And I talked to their facility person just to find out, like, do you have issues with this? And he said they actually have gone forward with that as a design on other buildings as well. So you're not the only ones with this kind of system, is what I'm getting at.
That was my thought of future repairs or, needed. How complicated does this create?
So with this system, we've added an electric heater at each one, which, I mean, over 10, 15 years, I mean, yes, you're going to have to replace one, but we've eliminated at each one of the units, we've eliminated a motorized valve, which is a moving part that will eventually need to be replaced. Also a flow control valve that regulates how much flow goes through, that has some moving parts. Those are both eliminated. And we've eliminated a pump. So we've gotten rid of moving pieces and then added the electric heaters.
So ongoing maintenance and operation costs could be lower too then.
Right.
Because of eliminating moving parts.
Yeah, the maintenance costs, I think would be lower in the long run. As I've said, you know, the operating costs will be a little bit higher, but as you stated, you know, to pay back that 150,000 probably wouldn't happen over the course of the life of the equipment.
Sounds good. Yeah, it makes
So-
sense to me.
Yeah, if I'll entertain any other questions, but if you're okay with that, I think we'll probably shift directions and go this route moving forward.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I had. So I'll probably sign off unless there's anything for me.
Super,
Doesn't sound like
thanks.
it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone.
Scott, do you have anything else?
No, don't believe so.
I think we need executive session, right, Lexi, for legal?
Yeah.
So I'll move we go to executive session
For legal.
for legal.
I'll second it. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those same sign, we're in executive section. Back up. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion passes. We're in regular session.
I'd make a motion that we offer to sell the folks a culvert at our cost, or at our cost. The purchase price to them would be the cost of our culvert.
Lone Spruce Farms.
Yeah,
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion passes.
Okay, so the motion was, just to clarify, that the county offered to sell Lone Spruce Farms a culvert at the county's cost for the culvert.
Hey, maybe we should,
I don't know if I typed that right. I'm just double checking.
should it be it's a 30-inch culvert.
a 30-inch culvert. How long? An appropriate length.
30 foot. Should,
Okay,
that should cut it.
because it is in the field.
Yeah, it's a straight shot, so it's not. a turn.
No overhangs of bean heads or any of that sort of thing. Okay,
Okay, so the county offered to sell Lone Spruce Farms the 30-inch by 30-foot culvert at the county's cost for the culvert.
that seems to be an appropriate cleanup of my poorly stated.
Well, I wasn't sure I typed it right, so that's why I'm asking.
Thank you. I always appreciate help.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those same sign, we're adjourned. Thank you.